네, 안녕하십니까. 2022년 의료 AI 윤리 콜로키움에 참석해 주신 여러분 감사합니다. 저는 오늘 사회를 맡은 성균관의대 삼성서울병원 양광모입니다. 추운 날씨 속에서도 이렇게 오프라인으로 많은 분들이 참석해 주셔서 정말 감사의 마음을
I'd like to
없습니다.
thank you very much
또
for
유튜브로
turning
참여해
up
주시고
offline.
계신 모든
We
분들께
also
감사
have our people
인사드립니다.
watching us from the other
시간에
side of the
따라서
screen. Thank you very much.
성균관대학교 의료인공지능
According to our
융합인재
agenda,
양성 사업 단장을
We
맡고
would like
계신
to
성균관의대
have
디지털 융합 미래의학
the
교실의
first
정명진 주임 교수님의 개회사가 있겠습니다.
opening
박수로 환영해
speech by
주십시오.
Professor Chung Myung-jin of 성균관 University. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
네, 오늘 굉장히 추운 날인데
It is quite chilly outside, but I can see many of you right here in person, even from the other regions in Korea, and I am really grateful to your attendance here. AI development, of course, in the medical field, there are rising concerns and voices over ethics issue relevant to AI. So this is going to be more and more important topic in the future. So against the backdrop, we decided to host this colloquium, and it would be a great opportunity for us to discuss this important topic among our discussants and the panelists. So I'd like to once again our panelists and presenters for their
감사합니다.
attendance here.
다음은 축사가 있겠습니다.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now
어,
have our people to give us
저희
the congratulatory remarks.
그래도 오셨는데
Since you're here, it's your turn.
보건복지부 보건의료
I'd like to
데이터
invite
진흥과 심은혜 과장님의
Ms.
축사가
Shim
있겠습니다.
Eun-hee,
박수로
Director of
환영해 주십시오.
MOHW, Ministry of Health and Welfare. Please welcome her with a big round of applause. Well, thank you very much, and very nice to see you all. My name is Shim Eun-hee from the MOHW. As mentioned earlier, this is quite a cold day. I was very surprised to a very big turnout today here. At this very important juncture when the policies are under review for major important issues of the AI. The Ministry of Health and Welfare has been keenly interested in precision medicine and also AI for the medical applications. We are now in the process of making a lot of policies for training relevant people. Medical devices and many other medical AI issues are quite important and complicated. I really hope that we can learn a lot from each other. Once again, thank you very much for making this event possible. Thank you.
네. 마지막으로
Last but not least,
한국보건의료정보원의
let me invite
원장님의
President
축사가
Im
있겠습니다.
Geun-chan of Korea Health Information Service for congratulatory remarks.
네, 여러분 반갑습니다.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Im Geun-chan from Korea Health Information Service. Actually, my team members have wrote down some scripts for me for the speech, so let me first take off my mask to speak before you. First of all, it is my great pleasure to speak before you in Medical AI Ethics Colloquium, and I'd like to thank Professor Chung Myung-jin, Professor Jang Yun-jung, Professor Choi Eun-kyung, Professor Lee Il-hak, who are the speakers of today's colloquium, and also I'd like to thank all the panelists who are going to participate in general discussion. And my special thanks go to the SMC officials who organized today's colloquium. AI is a new technology, but now it is going beyond our academic area. It is now being integrated into our life through metaverse, autonomous driving. The medical artificial intelligence is now going beyond simply remaining as an assistant tool for medicine, but now it is learning from patient healthcare data. So now it is being used for algorithm development for early diagnostics or the early detection of symptoms. And in the near future, by offering innovative solutions for disease treatment, I believe the AI can be a very good opportunity for us for our medical development. In 2018, the first AI was approved by the the FDA and the additional AI products gained more approvals, and now it is developing further from R&D to the commercialization sector. But this technology innovation
끊임없는 질문을 던지고 있습니다.
keeps asking questions to ourselves. Even in WHO in 2021, it published a guideline for AI use in healthcare sector, warning the side effects which can be caused by AI use in medical area as well as the positive impacts it can bring. The decision making, which focuses on efficiency,
활용의 수단으로는 될 수 있지만
can cost
항상 옳은 선택이 되는지에 대한
can save the cost, and also it can increase efficiency. On the other hand, it may cause some other unexpected side effects. On one hand, data
책임 소재,
security can be another big issue. If there is any error caused by AI, or if there is any issues in data protection, who can be held accountable for that? There are many uncertainties we need to address as well. And also we need to discuss that whether AI can be a care provider, which is not a human, but which is only a machine. So such a discussion also should be initiated. Any new technology can bring about benefits and risks at the same time. The benefits should be utilized, backed by the social consensus and agreement. And also, we need to develop these AI technologies into more human-centered tools so that it can support humans further to develop our medicine and treatment further. To advance the AI technologies in medical area, many people are making hard efforts. And by inviting these renowned experts into today's colloquium, I expect that I would hear from their insights, and that will be a great contribution to the development of the industry as a whole and AI technologies. Once again, let me thank the officials of SMC for organizing this important occasion. Thank you.
네. 그러면 이제 본격적으로 발표 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 바쁘신 일정에도 불구하고 이렇게 귀한 시간을 내주신 임근창 원장님께 다시 한번 따뜻한 박수 한번 부탁드리겠습니다. 발표 순서는 총 60분이 되겠습니다. 발표 시간은 총 60분이고 발표 시간은 15분씩 진행이 됩니다. 발표가 다 끝난 후에는 질의응답 시간이 준비되어 있으니까 모든 발표가 끝나고 나서 질의응답을 해주시면 되겠습니다. 먼저 제가 발표를 하고요. 그 다음에는 경북대학교 의과대학 의료인문학 교실 최은경 교수님께서 진행을 해주시겠습니다. 다음에는 국립암센터 장윤정 교수님, 그리고 연세대학교 의과대학 의료인문학 교실 이일학 교수님 순으로 진행을 하겠습니다. 제가 빨리 15분 정도 발표를 진행을 하도록 하겠습니다. 슬라이드를
Can I put up my slide here?
제가 이제 의료지능, 인공지능 개발 과정의 윤리적 문제와 제한이라는 주제로 발표를 하도록 하겠습니다. 의료 인공지능은 인공지능이라는 단어 자체가 약간 좀 모호한 부분이 있습니다. 그래서 인공지능은 그냥 사람이 가지고 있는 지능을 컴퓨터가 비슷하게 흉내를 낼 수 있는 기능을 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 근데 인간의 지능도 정의가 모호한데 어떻게 인공지능을 명확하게 정의할 수 있겠습니까? 그래서 예전에 기계학습, 딥러닝, 데이터 마이닝 이런 것들을 다 통합해가지고 인공지능이다라고 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 과거
one word,
이미지넷이라고
artificial
해가지고 굉장히
intelligence.
많은
If you recall,
10,000개의
ImageNet
클래스와
was something that
140만
was
장의
used
사진을
before.
분류하는 작업을
1,000 classes
매년
and
대회로 열고
140
있는데요.
million
근데
images were used
2010년부터
for a
해가지고
competition. Starting from 2010,
오류가
we began to see the
25%
error rate
이하로 상당히
the level
파격적으로
lower
줄어든
than
것을 볼 수가
25%,
있습니다.
which is much lower.
여기 지금 뭐 포인트가
since then
보이지가 않는데요.
I do not see my
25%
pointer
로
here.
25%에서 16.4%로 확 줄었는데요. 2012년에 무슨 일이 있었냐? 이때 이제 딥러닝이 만들어지기 시작했죠. 딥러닝이
What
더
happened in
고도화되면서
2010 then?
25%가 이제 인간의 오류율이라고 흔히들 얘기를 합니다. 아주
So the
작은
human
일이죠. 작은
intelligence has
일을
been
인간인 걸 증명하기
able
위해
to
가지고 우리가
prove
개찰하는
with very
그런
small images that they are human,
사람인
not the
것을 증명하는
robotic
그런
ones.
프로그램이라고
So we have
얘기를 하는데
programs to
그런
ask
것을 통해
people to
가지고 오류가
prove them
발생하는 것을
as
체크하면은
human beings, not
그걸
robots.
25%
So that
정도
was one
오류가
way of
보인다라고
reducing the error
하는데
rate, and
훨씬
then
더
we
낮은
have
퍼센티지로 보이는 것을
much
알
lower
수가 있습니다.
percentage of error rate nowadays thanks to
근데
this technology.
그렇게 정확하다고 하는 그
So we say
인공지능이
that AI has
사실은
been
문제가 있는 경우가 많습니다.
accurate and precise
2015년도에
nowadays. Still
구글의
we are
구글 포토라는
suffering a lot
서비스가
of
있는데 구글
problems and
포토에서
challenges. In 2015,
흑인 여성이
there was a
고릴라로
picture
분류되는
of
사건도 있었고요. 그리고
colored woman,
챕포였죠.
and she was regarded
MS에서
as a gorilla.
출시했었던
Also, we
테이라는
had a chatbot by
2016년도에 출시됐던
Microsoft
서비스인데
called Tay that was in
그
2016 when
챗봇이
it was
어뷰저에
launched.
의해서
There was
잘못된
an
사용자들이 잘못된
abuser
정보를 계속
to
학습시켜가지고
teach wrong
힐러가
information
받았다라고
to
한다든지
Tay. For example,
아니면
Hitler was right,
페미니스트는 다
or the
뭐 죽어야
feminists
된다
are
내지는 뭐
to
지옥에
be murdered,
가야 된다라고
or they have to go to
이렇게
hell. Things
셋을
like that.
날린
These
것을
were
볼
the
수가 있었습니다.
chats made by
그
the
외에도 최근에
abusers
들어서는
to Tay.
아마존의
Also
그
recently in Amazon,
이력서를
they
AI가
had a case
판독을
when
해가지고
the resumes
단락을
were read
결정을
by
했었는데
Amazon to
보다 보니까
select the
여성이면
candidates
굉장히
for
많은
the
사람이
hires.
탈락하는 것을
It
알
turned
수가
out that the
있었습니다.
females
보니까
were the losers
거기에
in this
그
program
샘플링을 해야
because
되는데
of the wrong
인공지능
sampling.
자체에서
In the
대부분
AI,
남성들 중심의
the
개발자가 있다
candidates
보니까
were
남성
females
중심의
because
가산점을 주게끔 설계가 돼
programmers
있었던
of
거죠.
computers
그러다
were
보니까
mostly male,
이
and then they
프로젝트가
gave
폐기가
more
됐었던 사례들도
weight
있고요.
of scores
그
to
외에도
males instead of
컴파스라고
women.
하면
So that
잘
program had to be
모르시겠지만
ended as well.
미국에서는
Compass is
제조자들
something you may not be
5방을
familiar with.
하는데
Compass is a
실제로
program
한번
used to
테스트를
test
했었던 프로그램입니다.
inmates of
그래서 마치
prisons
관상을
in the
보듯이
US
이
to
사람이
know whether they
재범을
will
할
be
것이냐, 재범을 하지 않을 것이냐, 범죄를 저지를 것이냐, 저지르지 않을 것이냐 라는 것을
criminals
테스트하는
or not.
그런 프로그램이었는데
So
실제로
using this Compass program,
보면
they were
왼쪽에
judging
보면
whether there's a likelihood of a
백인이고
person
오른쪽을
to be
보면
a
흑인이잖아요.
criminal.
왼쪽은
If you look
실제
at the picture at the
범죄자였습니다.
bottom,
보면 로우 리스크라고
white person is
백인이기
actually
때문에 로우
the
리스크라고
criminal,
표현하고 오른쪽은
and the black
흑인이라는
person is a
이유로 하이
regular
리스크라고
normal
표현하는
person.
것을 볼 수
But
있습니다.
because of the
실제로는
ethnicity, the
오른쪽은 평범한
program said
시민이었고
that
왼쪽은
this
실제
white person
범죄자였음에도
is
불구하고
not likely
이런
to
결정을
be
하는 것을 볼 수가
a
있습니다.
criminal, while the likelihood for
그
this black
외에도
person
우리가
to
요즘에
be a
자율주행이
criminal was
굉장히
very high.
보편화되지 않았습니까?
Grade of 10
근데
versus
보면
3. But
그
the truth
팬더를
was the opposite.
우리가 사람이 보면은 팬더 그냥 이게 노이즈가 좀 들어가더라도 팬더로 보이는데 실제로는 팬더가 아니고 기계는 컴퓨터는
Actually,
긴팔
machine
원숭이로
regarded
본다든지
as a
아니면
gibbon.
위에 스탑
Because of the
사인에
noise,
보면 스티커를 좀
perturbation added.
붙여으로써
On
이걸
the
써야
top of the
되는데
screen, you
서지
see the
못하고
sign stop.
50마일 또는
Cars have to
50km로
be
제한
stopped
속도가 50km인
automatically,
것처럼
but because
잘못
of
인식할
the
수도 있는
added
그런 사례가
information wrongly,
인터넷 유튜브에서
cars are recognizing the stop
찾아보면
sign as
굉장히 많은
the
영상들로 나와 있는
15
것을
mile
볼 수가
per
있습니다.
hour sign. So they
그것뿐만
didn't
아니라
stop at the
이런
stop
것이
sign.
자율주행에만
With
적용되는
these,
것이
we
아니라
can see that
정상인
there are many
앉아
problems. But we also
사진이라든지
have other
아니면
problems in this kind of medical issues as well. For example,
이런
we
것에
have the mixture of
노이즈,
regular normal images
가운데
with
보시면 이런
wrong
노이즈만 있다고 하면
images because of the
이것을
perturbations.
잘못
We have
오인하는
noises in the
경우도
middle.
생긴다는 거죠.
There is a possibility for
안저에
the
뭐 출혈이
machines
있다든지
to have the
아니면은
wrong information. If
폐에
they have
기흉이
the lower part of
생겼다든지
the
이런
eye,
식으로
they
잘못
can see that the kind
오인을 할
of
수
the
있는
blood
오판독을 할 수
clot.
있는
Also in
부분이
the
있다라는
lung
것을 알 수가 있습니다.
scan, picture, the machine can
그것뿐만 아니라
read the
최근에
narrative
우크라이나
of the
전쟁에서 가짜 뉴스,
where
우크라이나
there is nothing.
대통령인 젤렌스키가
And
무조건
Ukraine
러시아에
had lost the
항복한다라는
war, and
선언을
there
하는
was also
가짜
fake
영상들을
news
보신
that
적 있을 겁니다. 이제
Zelensky
보이스피싱도
surrendered
얼마 시간이
absolutely
좀
to
지나고
the
나면
Russian troops.
AI를
There was
통해
also
가지고
found to be
가짜
fake
목소리를
news.
충분히
AI was
학습해가지고
also
보이스피싱을
learning
할지도
wrong
모릅니다.
information.
그런 기술은 이미 충분히 만들어졌다라고 알고 있고요.
Maybe in the future we might have
이런 산업이
inundation of fake news
포르노
everywhere.
산업과 굉장히
These kind
결합해가지고
of
굉장히
industries
크게
are now linked with the
융성하게
pornography
부흥하고 있다라는
sectors
것이 널리
to
알려져
have the
있습니다.
prosperous
그리고 특히
business
문제가
as
되는
well
것은
now.
실제 유료
Very big
서비스인데요.
problem is found
GPT라고
in the paid
많이들 아실
businesses.
겁니다. 이게 챗봇에도 많이 사용하는
GPT-3 is
말뭉치들을 학습해가지고
a program
하는
to learn
인공지능인데요. 프랑스에서
concept
서비스하고
words
있는 그
to have the
챗봇이었는데
AI program
어떤
for
사람이
languages. In
나 그냥
France, the
죽어버릴까?
chatbot
Should I
was
kill
able
myself?라고
to have
이렇게
the
질문을
consultation
했는데
constantly with the people.
인공지능이 그렇게
When
얘기를
human
했다는 거예요.
person asked
그래
the
죽어.
AI that should I
그냥
die,
죽어. I
and
think
the
you should라고
AI said that I think you
대답을
should.
했다는 거죠.
Just like that.
그래서 이 인공지능 개발사였던
So the
그
AI
오픈 AI에서도
manufacturer, which is the
의학적인
OpenAI
진료나 이런
company,
판단을 하는 것은 아직까지 문제가 좀
regretted that
있다라고
and
이야기한
said
적이
that it
있습니다.
would be too early for
우리가
AI to be used
기계학습을
for
연구함에 있어가지고 이런
areas,
과정을 거치게
including the
되는데요.
mental health.
데이터를 수집을 합니다.
Now you
근데
have
데이터
the
수집할 때
process of
모집탄을 대표할 수 있는
learning
데이터를
by the
수집해야
machines.
되는 것이
In the machine
일단 기본
learning
전제가
process,
되는
they should
것이고요.
have the data
그다음에
first. Therefore,
지도
they
학습을
should
할
form
건지 비지도 학습을 할 건지
population.
강화
They
학습을 할
also
건지
have to
알고리즘을
decide
선택하게
what kind
됩니다.
of algorithms
그다음에
to
예측
take.
성능을
For
측정하게
example,
되는데
supervised
학습
learning,
데이터와 예측 데이터를
unsupervised
비교하는
learning,
것이
or
이제 기계학습의
reinforced
최종
learning. So when you measure
목표인데
the predictability
데이터의
of
한계로
minor
데이터를
goal for machine
하나,
learning
한
is to
세트
have
가지고 두 개로
very
나눠가지고
absolute
검증하는 경우가
data.
많습니다.
But sometimes
실제로는
one data set can be divided into
밸리데이션을 위해
two
가지고는
inside.
또
For
다른 완전히
validation, they
다른
should
데이터
have
셋을
a
가지고
absolutely
그
different
검증하는
data
것이
set.
좋은
In the
사례라고 할 수
ideal
있지만
but
그렇게 하지 못하는
that
경우가
is
많습니다.
not always
그래서
possible. In the real
윤리적으로
world,
이렇게
that is
뭔가
why they
인공지능을
have
만든다고 하면 데이터 수집
division
단계에서
of one
편향되지
data
않는
into
데이터를
two.
만들어야
So that can
되고
lead to the
그리고
bias of
알고리즘
information.
선택할
What is
때
important is not
가급적이면
to have the bias
설명이 가능한
or
알고리즘을
the
만들어야
AI to be
됩니다.
ethical.
가급적이면
Also,
설명이
they have to
가능한
have
지도학습 같은
power to
그
explain
해석이
things. So we
가능한
need
그 알고리즘을
explainable
선택하는 게
AI,
좋고요.
XAI.
그다음에
Also
그
when they
예측
select
모형을 인간이
algorithms,
이해할
we
수
should
있도록
have some
작업하고
kind of
밸리데이션은
supervised
가급적
learning
분리된 데이터를 이용하는 것이
explain algorithms. We
필요하다라고
also
말할
need
수
data
있겠습니다.
that can be separated
그리고
as much as
정확도는
possible for
아주
the purpose of
간단한
validation.
인공지능
When we talk about
알고리즘이라는
the
거는 뭐
accuracy,
단순하기 때문에
simple
해석이 아주
AI, as a
간단합니다.
simple one can
하지만
be
정확도가
fully
높은
interpreted.
앞서
However, high
그
accuracy
임근찬 원장님하고
as
잠깐 이제 차담을
President
나눴는데 임근찬
Imguncan
원장님께서
mentioned in the private talk
80년대에서부터
before
뉴럴
coming here,
네트워크나 뭐
he
이런
said that the neural
프로그램
networks since
방법들을
1980s
연구했었다라고
have been
잠깐 얘기를 하셨는데
studied.
이런
He briefly
복잡한
hinted that he
알고리즘일수록
was learning
정확도는
those things.
높습니다.
So the more
그렇지만 그것을
complex
해석하는 데는 오랜
algorithms,
시간과
the more
노력이
accurate they are. However,
드는
it
그런
takes much more
이율배반
time
관계, 트레이드 오프
to
관계라는 것을
interpret that. So
우리가
that is
알아야
a trade-off
된다라고
that we have to
생각합니다.
understand. In terms of the
지금
interpretability,
문제가 되고 있는 것은 당장의 문제가 되고 있다라고 생각하는 것은 이런 드론 무인 공격을 할 수 있는 인공지능이라고 할
an
수 있습니다.
AI that
이런
can
무인
have
공격을 할 수 있는 인공지능은
attacks
사람이
without having
타고
people
폭격기가 가가지고
present.
어디다가
So unmanned
핵폭탄을
vehicles
떨어뜨렸을
like
때
these
느끼는 양심의
can
가치보다
provide
더 적을 수밖에
less
없습니다.
pang of conscience when
이
they are
드론을
killing people
가지고
by
지금
dropping
멀리 떨어져 있는
bombs.
커맨드 센터에서 조종을
The
하는
command
사람이
center is
게임을 하듯이
very far
조종하는
away and
것만으로도
controlled by
굉장히
humans.
죄의식을
As if they
느끼지
are
못하는데
in a game.
프로그래밍 돼 있는
They
그리고
do not have
어떤 사람을
that
죽이라고
high
프로그램 코드로 몇 가지
consciousness of killing
명령을
people
내리고 나서
before.
그 임무를 수행하는
However, in the future,
것에서는
if
사람이
the
아무런
programs are
도덕적
really
그
unmanned and
죄책감을
nobody is
느끼지
pressing
못할
any
가능성이
button, only
충분히
machines
있다고
do,
생각합니다.
then there will be
그래서
a critical
윤리학자들이
level
먼저
not
그
to feel anything
이런
about
윤리적인
these
문제를 제시한 게 아니라 공학자들이 먼저 이런 문제를 제기하고 나왔습니다. 2017년도에 인공지능 국제 컨퍼런스에서 아실로마 AI 원칙을 제기를 했는데요. 여기서 오류 투명성, 사법적 투명성, 책임성을 강조했습니다. 여기에는 스티븐 호킹이나 일론 머스크나 굉장히 유명한 그 과학계 인사들과 2,000여 명이 넘는 과학자들이 참여해가지고 함께 발표를 했습니다. 이 이후에 여러 단체들에서 비슷한 내용의 발표를 했습니다. I3E에서도 트랜스페런시와 어카운터빌리티에 대해서 얘기를 했고요. 그 외에 EU에서도 역시 트랜스페런시와 어카운터빌리티에 대해서 얘기를 했습니다. 유네스코에서도 이런 AI의 가이드라인을 발표를 했고요. 여기서도 역시 트랜스페런시, 리스폰시빌리티, 어카운터빌리티 OECD 같은 경우에는 아무래도 노동시장의 유동성에 대해서 굉장히 관심이 있었기 때문에 노동시장이 변할 수 있는 것을 대비하라는 조항이 들어가 있는 것이 좀 특징이었습니다. 그 외에는 대동소이하다고 볼 수 있습니다. 그 외에 이제 한국에서도 의료 AI 윤리 가이드라인 제정 움직임이 있습니다. 앞서서 저희 신은혜 과장님께서 얘기하셨던 것처럼 보건의료 데이터진흥과에서 의료 AI 윤리 가이드라인 연구 용역을 지금 현재 연구를 해가지고 진행하고 있고요. 저희 연구팀이 그 일학 교수님을 필두로 해가지고 함께 연구를 하고 있습니다. 법적인 문제도 고려를 해봐야 됩니다. 현재는 AI가 잘못했다라고 하면 잘못 개발된 것인지 아니면 사용자가 잘못 사용해서 문제가 생긴 것인지에 대해서 판단하는 것도 사실 쉽지는 않습니다. 게다가 사실 유럽 같은 경우에는 사전적인 조치를 하는 경우도 있습니다. 그래서 유럽의 GDPR에 의해서 일반 개인 정보 보호법이죠. 그 보호법에 의해 가지고 자기 인생에 있어서 중요한 결정을 판단받지 않을 권리가 있는데 이런 권리를 우리는 보장하고 있지 않기 때문에 사실상 여러 한계가 있는 것이 사실입니다. 우리는 지금 개인정보보호법이 개정이 되었는데 이런 개정된 측면에 보면 좀 활용을 많이 강조하고 있는 측면이 있습니다. 물론 활용을 한다고 개정했는데 활용도 그 조금 어려운 부분이 좀 있고요. 그러다 보니까 여러 가지 또 한계도 있고 잘 활용을 하지도 못하는 그런 측면이 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 정리를 해보자면 인공지능에도 윤리는 필요하다라고 생각을 하고요. 그리고 윤리뿐만 아니라 법적인 규제 그리고 사업 규제 방안도 검토를 해봐야 된다라고 생각합니다. 이상으로 저희 발표를 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Not just for the ethics. This has been my presentation. Thank you very much.
네, 제가 시간을 맞췄는지 시간 맞췄네요.
Was I punctual on time? Yes.
저 다음으로는 최은경 교수님께서
The next
발표를
presenter is Professor
이어가시겠습니다.
Eun-kyung Choi
경북대학교
from
최은경 교수입니다.
Gyeongbuk
박수로
National
환영해 주십시오.
University School of Medicine. Please welcome Professor Choi with a big round of applause. Good afternoon. My name is Eun-kyung Choi. Could anyone please put my presentation slides on screen?
잠시 죄송합니다.
Please allow a few minutes for technical
있으면 나와야 될 것 같고요. 저는 저기
readiness. I think my presentation will pop up in a minute.
의료윤리 연구팀의 연구팀을 소속해서
I am part of the AI research team as introduced, and I am really interested in ethical guidelines, and that has been my research field for AI ethical guidelines in medical sector. So I see some familiar faces and new faces as well. And before I start, let me express my gratitude for giving me this good opportunity to speak before you in the colloquium. Today, I want to talk about the ethical principle to use artificial intelligence properly in healthcare field. In 15 minutes, I will do my best to complete my presentation. How do I turn to the next page?
예, 순서는 타임원 보건의료 분야 인공지능 윤리 원칙 타임라인을 먼저
First,
말씀드리고
I will outline the overall timeline for ethical guidelines for AI in healthcare sector, and I will see the various areas and themes of AI in healthcare sector, and also I will go into further detail for principles, values, or sub-principles and the challenges. Professor Yang gave some outlines on these ethical challenges in AI, and he mentioned that the engineers were the first who came up with the suggestion and proposal on ethical guidelines, which was called the Asilov guidelines for AI, and that was something I found as well in my research. International organizations like OECD, UNESCO, and other more specialized organizations and bodies were the first runners who proposed the ethical principles, but at the same time, the non-profit organizations in the UK or in European countries also published their concerns and their proposals, which they believe that which should be compliant in AI use in healthcare sector. And in 2019, physicians and clinicians who joined the flow to come up with the suggestion for AI ethical principles. And European Parliament think tank and the National Academy of Medicine recently joined this trend by announcing these guidelines. So these are the major guidelines which were relevant to AI in healthcare sector. Still, we are in the early days of AI use, and it is in the process of evolution, and Korea is not an exception in this trend. And I took some examples of these main guidelines, and there were some overlapping themes or repetitive themes, or some others are new themes. And I tried to summarize these important themes into a few keywords. Because this AI system extracts massive volume of data, so there are concerns over the privacy and confidentiality issues. And as Professor Yang mentioned, because this data reflects the underlying bias in the society. So the outcomes which are generated by AI can be biased as well based on the underlying data. So eliminating this data in the AI-generated outcomes can be another issue. And also when deploying this AI, how can we guarantee the autonomy of this AI system? In clinical setting, when deploying AI, what will be the role and responsibility between this AI system and humans? How can we define the role of humans, and how can we make sure the AI system contributes to the well-being of humans? These are the overlapping themes. And another key words are transparency, accountability, safety and security, and also the relations between clinicians or healthcare professionals and patients. How can we build trust in our relations between physicians, healthcare professionals, and patients if they use AI system? And also in social environment, there are other issues such as public trust, engagement and collaboration, and equality, social justice, and also sustainability. First, in data acquisition, privacy and confidentiality were the first topic. But as days passed in clinical setting, safety and security and robustness and reliability have been the more recently important topic. And if you look at the OECD guidelines, there are many topics or comments on sustainability. So how can this AI system have a positive impact on our climate crisis or on our planet as a whole? So the recent guidelines show more expansive relations or expansive comprehensive relations of AI system and the society in general. And the discussion is expanded further into the human dignity, sustainability, and all the others. I try to outline these various topics into a few keywords, but many of them are overlapped. So depending on how fairly the data is extracted by AI system, it can have impacts on the fairness as well as the social justice. So there are 2 or 3 overlapping major values, and under those major values, there can be some relevant subtopics as well. First, important keywords are privacy and confidentiality. A while ago, I had some interviews for advices, and I questioned, like, are these something relevant to big data? So what is different between big data and AI, and what is special about AI? For big data, the data collection or the massive collection is very important, but for big data, there should be a principle of minimum collection of data. So you should not collect too much data which goes beyond your necessity, but that is not the case for AI. So AI, for the AI development or evolution, it is better if you have more and more data. Here it comes that the privacy and confidentiality issue of these collected data, because sensitive data can be included in the collected data, and also AI system can intentionally expose this sensitive data. So it is true that the AI system and big data share some concerns. However, for AI, it has some more specific issues like profiling by the third party or subsequent stigmatization from that. So do we have relevant guidelines for that? Do we have such a guideline to guarantee the data protection and the privacy? And if we have existing guidelines for data protection for humans, is it applicable to AI system as well? These are frequently asked questions. And also, the AI system should guarantee a fair value throughout its life cycle. Only then it can generate the fair and unbiased outcomes. Here, the most problematic thing is that the underlying data itself has so many biases. So even without being aware of such biases, you will only know whether the generated outcomes from AI is biased or not only after you apply it to the patient right in front of your eyes. So these are only guidelines. So if you have some outcomes generated from AI, you need to test it first against any specific target group to test any bias. And probably this will encourage a continuous discussion and development further. And also, we need to think about the right to data or data protection. Can we guarantee the individual's control or individual's right to data?
이 환자가 동의를 하고 있는가라는
In
문제가
validation or in application of AI, can we get informed consent from
안
patients
바뀌었는데
after notifying them that
보건의료
these
이렇게
outcomes are
AI
generated
행위자들은
by AI?
전체적으로
So in
민주주의 가치를
healthcare
보호해야 된다
sector,
일반적으로
AI
이런 선언을 할 수가
implementers
있어야 될 것
should
같고요.
be able to declare that this
중요하게는
AI
이게
system
기존의 차별
guarantees the
편향이 없다고 말할
democratic
수가
and
없다.
fair
그리고
values
그것을
across
최소화하는
the
방식으로
life
해야 되고
cycle.
어떤
And it
분들은
is
이것이
impossible to
평등을
say any
보장하기보다는
AI
평등의
system
해결이 안
is
될 것이다.
perfectly
불평등을 해결할
unbiased.
수 있는 상황이 안 될
Nevertheless, we need to make
것이다라고도 얘기를
efforts to
하는 분이
minimize
있습니다.
such
그래서 그것을
biases.
최소화하기 위해서 모든 합리적인 노력을
So any
기울여야
or
한다고
all
할 수 있을
possible
것이고
reasonable
그다음에
efforts should be
정부가
made
그걸
to
위한 시스템을
minimize
갖춰야 될
such
것이고
biases. The
어떠한
governments
데이터
need to make
디지털 데이터
efforts to
보호및 보건
establish such
에코시스템을
system,
디지털
and also
에코시스템을
the digital
표현했습니다. 요즘. 그래서 그거를
ecosystem should
수립
be in
증진할 수 있어야
place
된다고
to
하고 있습니다.
encourage
그리고 이제는 굉장히 테크니컬한 어떤 문제로
such
가는데 이
principles
과연 그
and
결과가
policy. And this
안전한가?
lead us,
이게
this take us
세이프티라는 표현을
to
쓰니까
more
어떤 분들 페이셜
technical
세이프티 이게 세이프티가 뭐가 차이가 있냐고 하시는데 제가
issues.
생각하기에 이제
And when
AI
we
시스템에서
say
세이프티는
safety
결국
in
페이셜
AI
세이프티랑
system,
의료 AI에서는 연결이 됩니다.
it is
왜냐하면
relevant, it is
오류가
linked
있고
to
그
patient
오류라는 것을
safety
원인이
in
무엇인지
healthcare
판단해야
sector
되고
because AI
그것이
system
환자에게
can
위해를
cause
주지
some
않는다는
errors.
것이랑
So we need to
연결돼야 될
analyze these
것이기
potential
때문인데
errors,
그걸
and
과연
if
위의
and also we
가능성
need
자체를
to
다 차단시킬 수 있는가가
analyze whether it can have any impacts on patient
업셋할 수
safety.
있는가라는
Then
거에
can
대해서
we offset
충분한 노력을 기울여야 된다는 게
all this
원칙이라는 거죠.
possibility
그래서
for AI
AI가
system
안전한지
to cause
평가하는 건
errors?
쉬운 일이 아니기
For that, we
때문에
need to make hard efforts,
왜냐하면
any
이것이
reasonable
왜 어떻게
effort.
결과가 나오는지 모르기 때문에
We are
아직까지는
not
그 위험한
aware
AI는 사전에
the
이제
internal logics of
검토를 해야
AI
되고 안전성
systems
역치에
because
대해서 미리
AI works like a
질문을
black
해야
box.
된다.
So we need to
하고
continue
있고
to ask
그래서
questions whether this
그리고
AI
그
system
생애
is
주기 전체에
reliable enough
걸쳐서
and we
이게
can
모두
trust
예방돼야 되고
the
다뤄지고
outcomes
제거돼야 되고
generated from
미리
the
선별돼야
system. And
된다라고
all the
확인돼야
possible
되는 얘기를 하고
biases,
있습니다.
underlying
그래서 이거는
biases and risks
AI
should
시스템
be
자체의 안전성,
identified,
개혁 가능성
eliminated.
이런 문제들이랑
So this is
연결될
relevant to
것이고요.
the
두 번째로는
stability and the
이것이 왜 이런 결과가 나오는지에 대해서
reproducibility
투명성
of
있게
AI
하고 그
system.
위험 결과가 나왔을 때 그것을 교정 가능해야 되는 형태여야 된다라는 거죠. 왜냐하면
And the overall decision-making
AI가
process
지금까지는
should be
내부 연구를
transparent. And
확인하기가
if there
어려운
is
어떤
any error
상태이기
found
때문에
in the
블랙박스라는
process,
속성
then the
때문에
error
그래서
should be
투명성이
corrected.
갖추고
So
트랜스퍼런시 갖추고
transparency
이것을 오류가 생기면
should
트레이스버리티를
be
해야 된다라는 얘기
the
하나랑
basic
그리고 그 결과에
component.
대해서 엔드
And if
유저가
there is any mistake or error,
납득하는 게 된다.
they
마지막
should be
사용자라고 하는
corrected.
임상이나 아니면
And all
환자들이
these processes and the final outcomes should be acceptable and tolerable to end users, which are patients. So this links to another question, whether it is
그것을 또 공공적으로 이 오류들을 추적하기
possible
위해서
to
공공
gain
레지스트를 마련해야 된다
informed
이런
consent
얘기까지
from
이제
patients.
나오고
For that,
있습니다.
we
그리고
need to establish a
세금성은 이제
public register.
accountability,
This is one of
responsibility 뭐
the
이런 얘기를
proposals.
하는데 이거랑 휴먼 오버사이트랑 이제
When it
연결되기도 하고
comes to
연결되지 않기도
accountability,
하는데 어쨌든
responsibility, some of them
핵심은
are
이것을
relevant to human
이 결과에 대한
oversight or
책임을 누가
human
질 것이냐라는
override.
겁니다.
Here, the
그리고
key question
이건
is who
의사한테
will be held
있을 것이냐
accountable
아니면은
for the
데이터
decision
AI 시스템
for the
개발한
outcomes from
업자한테
AI
있을 것이냐
system.
등등의 이제 문제가 있는 것이죠.
Are these
그래서
clinicians or
그
are these
책임성에
AI
대해서는
developers and AI implementers?
미리
If there is
갖춰지지 않는데
any
이
errors
시스템에 대해서
caused
어디터빌리티가 있어야
by
돼. 감사를 해야 된다.
AI
감사
system.
가능성이 있어야지 결국 어떤
As part
사람에게
of
어떻게
the
어떤
efforts to
주체에게
guarantee the
어떤
accountability,
오류가
the
배정이
AI system
어떤
should
책임이
be
배정되는지 알
audited.
수가 있다. 그래서 이걸 개발할 때
When
어디터빌리티가 가능한
developing
형태로 개발을
AI
해야 된다.
system,
감사가 가능한
the
형태로
system
해야 된다는
should
얘기를
be
많이
developed and
합니다.
designed
그리고
so that it
이거는
can
이제
be
특별히
audited
이제
and traceable.
의료윤리의 어떤 의료계의 어떤 입장에서
Next,
의사 환자
from the
관계에
perspective of
기존에 있었던
medical
신뢰가
or
많이
healthcare
달라질
sector,
것이고
we can think about the
소멸될 수도
possible
있고 아니면은 이제
changes
더 증진되는
in
방향일 수도 있는데 어쨌든
healthcare
그것이 잘
professionals,
폴지컬 방향으로
patients
가야 된다.
relations with the use of AI system.
얘기고요. 그래서
By
세계
using
주기
the AI
전반에
system,
걸쳐서
can
안전하고 안전해야
it
되고
strengthen
또
the
의도치 않은
trust
위해나
of
취약사를
patients
방지하고
in
제고를
their
해야 된다.
healthcare professionals or
투명하고
not?
합리적인 공개 그리고 윤리적 법적 책임이 명마될 수 있는 감독 메커니즘 이런
The
것들이 우리에게
AI
되게
system in
필요하다라고
healthcare should be transparent
주시고요.
and
마지막으로
should be transparent
이제
and reliable.
보건의료 AI가 모인 어떤 사회적 환경으로 지속 가능성, 포괄적인 성장인 얘기를 주로 이제 또 말씀드릴 수
And
있는
there are
게
some other
보건의료계의
recommendations we can draw from these
인력
existing
제철
proposals.
문제들이
Next,
이제 더
sustainability
많이
and
대두가 될수
inclusive
있습니다. 그래서
growth.
의료인의 또 업무 생활에도 많이 영향을 미치고 의료인 잡 디스크리션이나 여러 가지로
AI system
영향을
can
미칠
have
수 있기
impact
때문에
on
이것을
everyday
같이
work
지속 가능성을
of
증진하는
clinicians,
방향으로
and also it can have
소셜
wide
인바운드
impacts
사회적
on the
영향이나
society.
아니면은 또 요즘 기후
So we
얘기
should
많이
think
하기 때문에
about the
프레데터리
AI
기후
system's impact
행성적인 어떤
on the
차원에서도
society,
당연히
on
이런
the
것들이
public, and
필요하겠다.
on
라고
planet
얘기를
as
하고
a
있고요.
whole.
또 하나의 문제는 이게 굉장히 다자적인 사업이고
On the other hand,
과학자들 의사들
any
뿐만이 아니라
AI
환자 단체
project
시민단체
is
그리고
multidisciplinary
폴리스 메이커 다양한 어떤
program.
다자들이 참여하기
So
때문에
many
공공민간
stakeholders, such as
파트너십이
regulators,
적절하게
patients,
이루어지고 그것이
healthcare
어떤
professionals
같이
are
가는,
engaged all
인테레스트로,
together.
이익으로 가야 된다라는
So
얘기를 합니다.
all of
그래서
these
적극적으로
different
이거를 참여해야
stakeholders
된다 뭐 이런
should
얘기를 할 수가
collaborate
있을 것 같습니다.
together
그래서
for
제가
the
원래 이번
public good.
슬라이드에는 쭉 파이프라인을 얘기를 많이 합니다. 그러니까
Such collaboration and cooperation among all different stakeholders should be continued and encouraged.
쭉 가는 거 거기서 이제 가지는 퀘스천들이
And in the slide I am working on, or in my research presentation I am working on, it includes the pipeline for AI system development. And there is a basic pipeline which includes all the important guidelines and recommendations. And there are some branches coming from this pipeline to show various subtopics and relevant questions.
요즘 제안들이 있는 방식이고요. OECD에서는 뭐 그것들을
For each and every question, there are answers collected from guidelines and recommendations by OECD or international organizations. And these proposals and recommendations can be utilized by people in the field. So if there is another opportunity, I hope that I will be able to show you that pipeline, which will help you better understand about the overall trend in this AI discussion around AI in healthcare sector. So this cartoon will show you the basic summary of our discussion. So these are the different questions coming from different stakeholders. I want AI fairness, I want AI efficiency, and AI safety. And from the AI perspective, it wants have infinite battery, and also just it says you can talk to me when you are done with the negotiation. With the expanded use of AI system, we may trade off some of the values. Then it will be very important to strike the balance between different values, which we can prioritize more and we can less prioritize. With this, let me wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you so much.
발표해 주신 최영경 교수님께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀드립니다. 이어서 장윤정 교수님의 발표가 있겠습니다. 장윤정 교수님, 뜨거운 박수로 환영해
Dr.
주시죠.
Chang Yun-jung from National Cancer Center.
안녕하십니까. 저는 좀
Yes, good afternoon.
원리 원칙과 관련해서는 어려운 용어들이 많이
I
나오죠. 근데
have
이거를
to
쉽게
tell
우리가
you
AI
and warn
개발과
you that we
활용이
have a lot
어떻게
of
적용할 수
terminologies
있는가에
and
대한
jargons for the
부분은
AI in
잘
my
이해가 안 되실
presentation.
겁니다. 그래서 저는
Maybe you have some
이제껏
limited
나온
understanding
것들에
where
대해서
they are
사례
used
중심으로
or what
말씀을
kind
드리도록
of definitions
하겠습니다.
they are.
좀 내용이
So I'd
많아
like
보일 수
to, as
있는데
much as
좀 빨리
possible, use
넘어가면서
case
사례를
studies
좀 많이
to make you
소개해드리도록 할게요.
have better understanding about what AI is about when it comes to medical uses. So please understand that I'm going to show you a lot of cases.
먼저는 우리가
First of
의학과
all,
의료와 보건이 무엇인지를
we have to
이해를
know
하셔야
the
되고요.
differentiation
우리가
amongst
최선의
three topics
의학이
like
있다
medicine,
하더라도 우리가
medical care, and
현장에서
public
개인에게
health. Although
적용하는
you
걸
are
의료로 할 수
the
있습니다. 그래서
medical people,
퍼스널리제이션의 이제
anything that is
방법이죠.
geared
하지만 우리가 보건이라고 하는 거는 이거를 제너럴리제이션을 해서 비용 효과적으로 대중에게 어떻게 접근하냐입니다. 우리가 인공지능의 어떤 프로그래밍을 만든다 하더라도 목적 자체가 최선의 의학적인 것을 선택하게 하느냐 아니면 우리 현장에서 가장 적절한 개인화된 선택을 하도록 하느냐 아니면 보건의료적으로 비용 효과적인 선택을 목적으로 하느냐에 따라 다르다는 거죠. 이런 목적이 불분명하면 명확하지 않은 인공지능 프로그램이 만들어지게 됩니다. 프라이버시와 기밀 보호라고 한다면은 예를 들어 최근 이제 코로나 관련돼서 굉장히 많은 일들이 있었고 싱가포르에서 만든 어플이 기능적으로는 매우 유용하지만 이것이 핸드폰에 개인정보들을 침해하면서 이것을 정부가 가지고 가는 이런 문제들이 있어서 개인정보 침해 사례로 유명한 사례가 됐고요. 불형병 사례는 사실 저희가 미국 같은 경우는 이제 민간 보험들에서 퇴원을 빨리 시키는 게 병원의 회전율을 높이니까 굉장히 효율적입니다. 그래서 퇴원을 빨리 하는 환자들을 입원을 시키는 것을 목표로 하고 빨리 어떻게 하면 퇴원 시킬까가 목적인데 그거를 이제 분석을 해봤더니 부유한 동네에 사는 집코드를 가진 우편번호를 가진 사람들이 빨리 태어난다는 거예요. 왜냐하면 가난할수록 중증도가 높고 조절이 안 되는 질환을 갖고 입원을 하게 되는 경우가 많기 때문인 거죠. 이렇기 때문에 이런 부분은 사실이긴 하지만 사회적인 불평등을 초래할 수 있는 인공지능이 개발이 된다는 겁니다. 자율성과 관련된 부분 최근 이제 안면인식 기술 관련해서 병원에서 출입을 하거나 의료진이 이걸 터치하지 않기 때문에 굉장히 감염의 위험을 줄이기 위해 좋은 기술이긴 하지만 인공지능의 아까도 안면인식 기술에 있어서 부정확성이 높다는 거가 있고 특히 인종적인 문제라던가 이 데이터베이스에서 학습시키는 것이 얼마나 차이가 있는지를 알 수 있습니다. 그래서 우리가 만약에 타인종의 사람이 출입을 하려고 쓰려면 인식이 제대로 안 될 가능성도 있다는 거죠. 그러니까 이런 자율성과 관련된 침해들도 분명히 가능한 거고 데이터 편향과 관련된 거 아까 이제 빅데이터와 인공지능의 문제가 있었다고 하지만 인공지능의 기본적으로 데이터 학습입니다. 그래서 이 데이터로 학습되어 있는 인공지능이 얼마나 이제 많이 있느냐가 결국에 이 데이터의 편향을 드러내는 건데 인공지능이 현재는 미국과 중국 그리고 이제 한국도 수위에 포함되어 있으면서 이런 데이터 편향을 보여주고 있다는 거고 이런 데이터 편향이 국가적인 부분도 있지만 한국가 내에서도 인종적인 부분 특히 이제 미국 같은 경우는 저는 국립암센터에서 와서 암에 대한 걸 데이터를 보여드리는데요. 미국에는 인종별로 암 발생이 거의 비슷합니다. 하지만 임상 시험에 들어가는 거는 백인들이 많고 오히려 인종이 적은 숫자인 아시안인이 두 번째가 되는 거죠. 그다음에 유전체 정보를 가지고 하는 연구다 그러면은 90% 이상이 백인이라는 건데 이 말은 결국에 이런 연구가 많아지고 알고리즘이 만들어질수록 백인을 위한 치료와 그런 알고리즘만 만들어지고 그래서 다른 인종에게 적용하기 힘들다는 건데 그 옆에 그래프는 유방암 발생이 연령별로 어떤 차이가 있는지를 인종으로 보여주는 겁니다. 아시아에서는 주로 30대가 피크를 이루는 반면에 백인과 흑인에서는 나이가 많을수록 유방암의 피크를 이뤄요. 그래서 우리가 유전적으로는 발생이 유방암이라고 이야기를 하지만 인종적 차이가 있다고 분명히 알고 있고 이런 것이 정밀의료 여러 치료제에서도 인종적인 차이가 나오고 있거든요. 그래서 특히 유전자 정보라든가 이런 데이터 기반의 학습을 할 때 이것이 편향성이 있는가, 데이터 편향성이 있는가를 보는 것이 굉장히 중요하고 있는 데이터를 가지고 편향성을 극복하기 위한 통계적인 방법도 있지만 우리가 이런 데이터를 우리가 개발하고자 하는 확보된 데이터가 편향성이 있는가에 대한 페어니스를 체크하는 이런 방법들로 활용이 되고 있습니다. 자율성과 관련된 부분은 사실 우리가 인공지능의 데이터를 쓰는 것이 만들어진 데이터를 쓰는 것도 있지만 이것을 활용하면서 확보된 데이터를 다시 인공지능으로 재활용하는 경우들도 있죠. 근데 우리가 만약에 이걸 프로그래밍으로 쓰고 있다면 이 사람들에게 내 데이터가 다시 입사적으로 다른 프로그램에 사용될 수 있다는 것을 제공을 받느냐 라는 것이 문제가 됩니다. 예를 들어 얼마 전에 문제가 됐던 이루자 사건 같은 경우도 굉장히 민감한 사적인 그런 대화들이 DB화가 돼서 그것이 학습화됐기 때문에 이상한 대응들을 한 거잖아요.
responses by AI were
현재는
quite
다 이런
strange and
숫자라던가
offensive
검사
because
결과
they
중심의
had the
데이터셋이
learnings
있지만
from
실제
the
사람의
wrong
환자와의
data sets. For
면담이라던가
example, they didn't have
심리적인
the
상담과
right
관련된
conversations
굉장히
of
the
개별화돼
dialogues
있는
with
그런 내용이
the
만약에
patients.
비교가 된다고
So if we
한다면
have very
그것이
sensitive
개인의
information
구별뿐만
included
아니라 그것으로
in the
학습된
data,
것을
that
다시
in itself is a
피드백을 받는
breach of
과정에 문제가 생길 가능성이
privacy.
충분히
So
있습니다.
in the
그래서
process
이런
getting the
부분을 앞으로 어떻게
feedback,
우리가
we can
극복할지
see that there
또한
can be a likelihood
안정성이라는
of
거는 사실 우리가
causing
인공지능으로
another
만들어진
scandal.
것이
Stability
매우
is quite
효과적이고 안전할
important
것이라는
for
기대를
AI. And
가지고
also people
코로나
have
때 많은
expectations
이제
that
약물
anything AI
후보 물질이라던가 이런
related to
것들을
COVID-19, for
바이러스에 대한
example, would
분석을
be very
통해서
stable and
개발
trustworthy.
기간을 단축시키는
So they
많은
wanted to
의도들이 있었죠.
reduce
근데
the
실제
time
이렇게 만들어진
spent
것이
for
정말 효과적인 약일
developing
것이냐?
drugs against COVID-19. But can we make sure that these drugs, through a very short time frame, are really stable and safe? That's an issue we have to solve. And also recent papers talked about these issues. For example, we had a lot of images related to COVID-19 based on the AI. But are we sure that they are really trustworthy and usable? But it says that after the study, only 20% of the studies and images are trustworthy. Although we have abundance of data, not many of these data sets are really meaningful or substantial. So that's why we call them garbage in, garbage out.
굉장한 이슈가
So
되고 논문화
in
되고
itself,
요즘 코로나만
having
있으면
this
다
study
퍼블리시가
is
됐지만
a
실제 이거는
big
결국 마케팅에
issue,
쓰였다.
and
그러니까
people
우리가 사실
really
인공지능
were
가지고 아까
interested
특허도
in
많다라고
knowing what
말씀하셨고
kind of
많은 연구들이
outcome
되고
are
있는데
coming from
이것이
these
현장에
studies
쓰이냐
and
하는 건
paper.
완전히 다른
But
문제가
later
됩니다.
it turned out
그래서
that all
이런
these
것들이
studies
괜히
were just
저희가
gone wasted, and it was a hype
기대와
from the
활용에
beginning
대해서
that they can have
목적화하고
the
있고
high
그런
expectation
특허라던가
at the people.
논문이라는
They
것이
were using
굉장히
these kind of
낮게
papers for the
접근이 되고
purposes
있다는 거가
of
문제고
getting the
결국에 이런
patent
것들은
or
데이터 관리,
getting
학습을
the
어떻게
licenses.
시키는지도 이것을
So
어떻게
people were
업데이트를 할
kind of
것인가에 대한
deceived by
구체적인
that kind of
내용이 있지
phenomena.
않으면은
So
개발된
nowadays,
것이
without
적용되고
knowing the
다른
details
데에
of the
활용되기
papers,
어렵다라는 부분이
we
있습니다.
are not
그래서
sure
최근에 이제
whether they
미국에서
have the
나온
real applications.
그 굿머신 러닝 프랙티스 가이드라인
Recently in
같은
the US, Good
경우에서도
Machine
이런
Practice
트레이닝 데이터에서
Guideline
어떻게
have been
업데이트하고
out,
이것들을
and that's
어떻게
about
다시
how
평가할
they can
것이냐에 대한
really
부분이 나와
have
있고
the session
이런
to
부분이 있지
revalidate
않는
the
한
processes out of
인공지능은
the
진짜 그냥
AI.
개발하고
Without
박수
having
치고
these kind
끝나는
of
경우가
checking
많다라는
processes,
거죠.
AIs
또
will
하나 이제
end
아까
up
뭐
being hype
트랜스퍼런시
only,
설명
not
가능성에 대한
giving
많은
any
논란이
detailed
말씀은 있었지만 이게
benefits.
무슨
There will be
의미냐
only
해서는
a
지금
thunder.
왓슨이
So,
없어지는 거 아실
like
거예요.
just
왓슨이
like
없어진
Nets, you
이유
know,
중
the
하나가
Watson is
이게
going
왜
to
이렇게
be
결정을 했는지
closed
설명을
because
못한다는 거예요.
Watson
그래서
was
설명
not
가능성이
able
있지
to
않은 한
explain
아무리
what
정확하게
the
추정을
data
하더라도
was really about
의학인이
or
받아들일 수
where
없고 또한
they get the
정확하지 않은
data.
추정을 하는데
Although
왜
Watson
이걸
was a
그렇게
phenomenon
추정했는가에
before
대해서 서로
in the
설득이
medical
안 되기
industry,
때문에
now we don't
이런
believe in
프로그램은 더
Watson
이상 쓰이지
anymore
않게
because it
됩니다.
cannot explain
그렇기
where
때문에
the data was
트랜스퍼런시의
coming
하나를
from.
이제
It was only a
오픈니스라고
black
얘기를
box.
하는데
This kind of
그래서
system
이런
is
것들이
no
어떤
longer
식으로
needed.
데이터셋을 해서
Now,
우리가
the
어떤
next thing
식으로
we need is to have the
만들었다라는
transparency.
과정들이
All
사실
these
굉장히
processes of
중요합니다.
getting to
근데
the
이제
end
많은
of the product should
기업들이나
be able
개발자분들은
to
이런 거를
explain.
영업
All
비밀이라고
these
해서 오픈하지
developers say that
않으려고
this is
해요.
kind of trade
그렇게
secret,
돼서
and they are
공개되지
very
않은
hesitant
거는
to
사실
disclose
쓰이지
what's
않습니다.
inside
신뢰를
the black
얻기
box.
어렵기
But
때문에
nowadays, the
그래서
society doesn't
이런
accept the
양면의
fact
이
that anything in the
균형을
black
어떻게
box should
가져갈
be
것이냐가 앞으로
protected.
이런
So
인공지능
you should
산업계에서
have
굉장히
some kind
중요한
of fine
부분이라고
balance
생각하면
between the
또 하나는 이제
transparency
인공지능
and
프로그래밍과
the
알고리즘 만들어졌다
privacy
하더라도 아까
and trade
이것으로 인해서
secret.
우리가
Although there
그냥
are final
맡기고 갈 수
products
없다라는
out
거죠.
of
만약에 알람
AI,
시스템을
we cannot just let them go just
중환자실이나
like that. For
병실에다
example, if in
놨다
the
한들
ICU,
센서가
even though
오류가
the alarms
있거나
are
그럴 수
there,
있는 가능성이
if
충분히
sensors
있거든요.
are
그렇기 때문에 의료진은
malfunctioning,
인공지능으로 알람
which is quite
시스템이
likely,
있지만
there's no
3시간마다
use for
라운딩을
that.
돌아야 되는
Therefore, we
것이
need
당연한
human
것입니다.
beings
그래서 우리가
rounding
이런
around the
생존성과
beds
책임성, 인간의
every
감도,
3
자동화
hours
안주가
is
되지 않기
needed
위한
for
방안들을
us to
항상
have the
공유를 해야
human
되는 거며
checking. So
의사
this kind
환자의
of
관계에
stability,
있어서도
accountability,
인공지능이
and
들어왔다고 해도 우리가
responsibility
이런
should be
것에 의한
always be
의사
there.
결정을 모두 맡길
Although
수
we have the
없다는 거예요.
trust between
아마
the doctors and
의료에서는
the
이제
patients, we
evidence-based
cannot
medicine,
leave
evidence-based
everything to
practice라는 얘기를
doctors.
하고 있지만
So in the
실제
medicines, they say that everything is
현장에서는
about
뭔가
the
쉐어드
trust
디시전이
in
훨씬
the
많습니다.
doctors. But in
에비던스에서 결정될 수
actuality,
있는 거는 뭐
we have to
항생제로
have a
결정하거나
shared
몇 가지
decision.
말고는
In the
거의
EBM, evidence-based
언설팅기가
medicine,
높은
they
의사결정들을
say
하기
that they
때문에
are going
정말
to
더
be
그런
based on
거고
the evidences only. However,
특히
we
이제 우리가
also see that
evidence-based
there are a lot
medicine의
of
끝판왕이
rooms
메타
for the
분석이라든가
misunderstanding.
시험이라고
The final
하더라도
end of
자체가
the
퍼블리케이션 바이어스.
EBM is the
결과가 없는
metaverse
연구들은
programs.
퍼블리케이션
So
자체가 안 되기
without
때문에
results, there's
퍼블리케이션 된
no
것만 모아서 보는
publication as
메타분석
papers.
자체는
We
의미가
have to look
굉장히 떨어질
into
수밖에
all
없다라는
these
게
data
현실이고
coming
또
from
많은
different
경우에 우리가 이런
papers
것들에
in
대한 만약에 연명의료
meta-analysis.
결정을 하는 것을
However,
에비던스 근거로 절대 할
meta-analysis
수
on
없거든요.
the
개인의 가치 판단이
unimportant
분명히 들어가야 되는데
ideas
그것을
in
인공지능
papers,
기계가
nominal
바뀐다
papers
한들
is
이런
not
것을 우리가
also
과연
important
신뢰하고 활용할 수
either.
있겠느냐
Can you
라는
really
거는 현상을
trust these
이해하지 못한
outcome of
개발자
the
중심의 접근이라는
pieces and
것밖에 안
papers
됩니다.
not coming
그리고
from
이런
the
이제 개발과
actual
활용의
field
간극이
activities of
분명히
the
있는 거고
hospitals?
이런
So
것이
without
산업화를
reflecting
초래할
the
때
real situations in
미치는
hospitals, we
영향 그래서
cannot give
이런
100%
인클루시브 앤
credit.
그로스를
And they
갖는
can
부분이 있고
be also a
많은
need
경우
for
이제
us to
저희가
have
한 몇 년 전만
inclusive
해도 뭐
growth
영상의학과
with
의사 없어질 것이다 이런 얘기
sustainability.
했지만
Up
절대
until
그렇지
some years ago,
그러니까 의사가 하는
radiologists
역할은
will
단순한
be going
진단이나
home
정확도만
with
높이는
losing
일이
their
아닙니다.
jobs.
정말
But
의사가
it
무엇인지를
turned out
안다면
that
이런
that's
것이
the
없어질
opposite
거라는
of it.
얘기를 아무도
We
못할
need
거예요.
doctors, human
인공지능이
doctors still,
활용할 수
and
있는
we need
영역은
those
우리 주변에 널려
radiologists to
있지만
read the
이런
data
것들이 실제 우리
from.
산업에
We
우리
do have a lot
직업에
of
어떤 영향을
other
미칠지에 대한 조금 더
professions
심도
that are
있는
newly
고민이
arising.
필요하고
And we
이것들이
have to ask
대체되는 것이
ourselves what
아니라
kind of impact they will
활용된다라는
give
관점에서
us
접근을 해야
in
될 거라고
the
보입니다.
or
그래서 가장
afterwards.
중요한
So we
거는
have
우리는
to be
분명히
able to
인공지능에
check
한계가
what
있다는
kind
걸
of
알아요. 근데
future will be
그것들을
there. We
마케팅을
also
할
know
때는 또
that there is
그게
a
다인
limitation
것처럼
to
이야기할 수
AI.
있기 때문에
However, the
대중의
marketing
신뢰를 얻고 판매와
pitches of
협력을
AI
받으려면
say
일단 과학
that they are
만능주의자
everything.
한계를
So we
인정하면서
have to understand
대중의
that there
참여를
is a
갖고
limitation
오프니스를
of
가져가는 것이 굉장히
scientism. Science
중요하다고 할
cannot
수
bring
있습니다.
all the
이런
solutions there
부분을 이제
are.
유럽에서는 사회에 책임지는 연구
In Europe,
혁신이라는
because
말을
of that,
하면서
they also
이런
have the slogan
현재
of
우리는 최선을 다하는 연구를 하지만
RRI,
이런 부분에
responsible
한계가 있고
research and
경제적
innovation.
위험과 기회가
They
있기
said they are
때문에
doing the
우리가
researches,
함께
but they
이것을
are
해야
aware
된다라는
of
설득을
the fact that
국민에게
their
해가면서
researches
이런 일을 해야
have the
되는 거고
limitations, and they
이런
have to be able
것들이
to
이제 저희가
convince the
포피라고
fact
하는데
that they are
리빙 랩
getting
중심의
those
함께 개발하고
limited
그 다가가는
researches, and we
연구들을 앞으로도
call it
진행을 해야 될
4P,
거예요.
public,
또한
private,
인공지능을
and
보통
people
적용하는 것이
partnership.
디지털화되는
So that's
이제
the way
활용에
forward in the
국한되기
future.
때문에
Since
이것들이
we
계속
are using
활용이
AI
되면
for the
정보
utilization,
격차가
if we
큰
continue to do that,
더 활용에 뒷달릴수록
digital
혜택을 못 보게
divide will
됩니다.
be
그래서
bigger and bigger,
우리가 코로나
leaving
동안에
the
마스크나 뭐
underprivileged
백신 이런 거
people
위치
behind.
예약하고 이런 거 다
So we
앱으로
have the
했지만 그거를 못 찾으신
location
분은
systems
줄
for
서는
the
일들이
people
벌어진 게
on the
바로
street
디지털
during the
격차의 가장
COVID-19
큰
period.
한
And people
모습이었다고
without
생각을
those
하고요.
services had to
기술이
wait outside
발전이
on
될
the
때 우리가
street.
거기서
They're
소외되는
not being
집단에 대해
included in
어떻게
the
적용할
programs.
것인가를 항상
So we
고려를
have
해야
to
되고 이런
understand
부분은
what kind of
인공지능을
approaches we can
개발하시는
make to
분,
those
연구하시는 분들이
marginalized
기본적으로
people.
한계를
So
인정하고
I
이것을
really hope
극복하기
that all
위한
the
노력을 해야
researchers
되는데
and the
예를 들어 이
academicians can
히포크라테스 선사는
understand the
의료인이
limitations
한다면
of
AI
AI
연구자
when they
윤리에
have
대한
the
이런
researches. For
선언문이라든가
example,
이런
we have
것들이
to have the
필요하고
Hippocratic Oath
최근에는 많은
for
기업들에서 이런
the
것들을 하고 있는 걸로 알고
researchers.
있습니다.
Like that,
이게
we should
마지막
have data
슬라이드
science
되는데요.
oath for the
제가
AI
감명 깊게
scientists.
읽었던
This is the
이제 한
last slide.
페이지인데
So I had one
결국에
page that I can take
앞으로
from
우리가
reading Yuval Harari's book,
다음에
and I was
우리의
very
인간은
much
어떤
impressed by
인간이냐라고 하면
his
선택된
book.
인간들이
He says that in
살아남는
the
거고
past,
이거는
with the
결국 각
aristocrats
기술에
were
의해서
surviving, but
혜택을
in the
받은
future,
인간들의
those with
부분이
the
살아남을 거라는 거죠.
data
그러니까
will
우리가 이런
survive
혜택에서
while
소외되지 않도록
leaving the
공정성을
underprivileged
갖고
people
활용의 기회를
behind.
넓히는
So we
이런
have to make sure
인공지능의
that that will
활용으로
not
앞으로는
happen
좀
to
더
us.
나아갔으면
Therefore, the
좋겠습니다.
AI should
이상입니다.
have the better and more desirable direction. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다. 마지막으로
Thank you, Professor
연세대학교
Zhang. The last
이일학
presenter
교수님의
is
발표가
Professor
있겠습니다. 뜨거운
Il-hak
박수
Lee from
부탁드리겠습니다.
Yonsei University. Please welcome Professor Lee with a big round of applause.
예, 방금 소개받은 이일학입니다.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Il-hak Lee
그
from Yonsei University.
죄송합니다. 제가 말씀드리려고 하는 내용은
Today, I want to talk about
이 의료 분야에서 인공지능을 개발하고
the use of AI in
활용하고
healthcare
있는 전문가들이
sector is the
이런 어떤 종류의
main
의료적인
topic of
문제들을
today.
고민하고 또
And
저희
if this
연구진이
AI system
제안을
is being
하고
actually
또
used by
검토해
healthcare
주셔서 답변을
professionals,
드렸던
what are the
의료적인
main questions
이슈들을
for them?
이해하고
What are the
계신지,
main ethical
또 어떤
issues for
방향성이
using this
필요하다고
AI? And from the
전문가적인
perspective
입장에서
of healthcare
제안을
professionals,
하시는지를
many
좀
of them
같이
are
나누기
actually
위해서
contemplating and
준비한
considering many
자료입니다.
ethical issues of AI use in healthcare sector. So I want to share what I have interviewed and surveyed for these ethical questions among healthcare professionals for
말씀드렸던 대로
AI
기술 개발자, 또
system
임상에 적용하는
use
임상의사,
in healthcare sectors.
또
The survey
한편으로는
was
이 많은 연구자들이
conducted
개발자인
for
동시에
clinicians.
사용자이기도 하고 또 감독을
Many of
하고 있는
them are
사람들이기도 하고
AI users,
산업적인
implementers,
관점을 가지고 있는
and
사람들이기도
also
합니다.
they are the supervisors,
다양한
or some of them
관점들을
have the
어떻게,
industrial perspectives.
종합하고
So from different stakeholders,
그래서
how
의미
can
있는
we integrate
논리적인
the
논의로
different
발전시킬 수
voices
있을지를
and
고민하면서 논의를
different voices
진행했습니다.
from these
근데
people
기본적으로 말씀을 드리면
to
결론부터
reach
조금
a
미리
meaningful
말씀을 드리면
conclusion?
인공지능이 가지고 있는
And
임상적인
if I
함의점은
suggest the
결국 사람이
conclusion
배제되는
of my
형태의
survey,
인공지능이 아니다.
first is that
인공지능이 개발되는 과정부터 응용되는 단계,
human
이 모든 과정에서
should not be
사람이
excluded
관여하고
throughout
사람의
the
능력을
use of
어떤
AI
방식으로
system.
향상시키고
Human should be at the very
관리하고
center
조정할
of
것인가.
development,
그래서
deployment,
더
and the
의미
maintenance
있고
of AI
쓸모
system
있는 더
in
좋은
healthcare
인공지능을 개발하는 데
sector.
있어서
So to
사람이
develop
무엇을
more
할수
efficient
있겠는가라고
and
하는
better
점에 관심이
AI
모여져야
system,
된다라고
what can
하는
humans do?
성찰들을 제시해
These are
주셨습니다.
the main
제가
insights common
진행했던
to
이
every
인터뷰는 현재
interviewee I
상황,
met
현재
in my
수준과
survey.
또 여러 가지
In
윤리적인
this interview,
도전에 대한
I asked
인식을
questions
1차
about their
자문을
perception and
통해서
recognition
얻었고요.
on current
그리고
status
2차
of AI
추천
and
면접을
the
통해서는
risks,
다양한 윤리적인
dangers, or
이슈들
some potential side effects they
어떻게
may
이해하고
see
있는지
in the
그것들에
field,
대한
and also
전문가들의
possible
관점이
challenges
무엇인지를
from the perspective
이제
of
7-8
experts.
가지 주제를 바탕으로 해서
So for this
물어보았습니다.
interview, I
1차
categorized these
면접을
topics
중심으로
into
먼저
7
말씀을 드리겠습니다.
areas.
현재의 의료 영역
First,
인공지능의
the current
수준에
state of
관해서는
medical
일단
AI.
한국의 경우에
As for the
기술
current
수준에 있어서는
status of
세계적인
medical
수준이라고
AI,
말씀을
I can say at least in the
의료
Korean
현장에서
market
실제로
or
사용하는
in
상용화
Korea,
단계까지 와
the
있는
AI
기술들이
system has
있다.
reached
특히
to some
분석을 자동화하는 기술을
considerable state developed
응답들을
status.
하셨는데
Many of them
다만
are
진단인가,
close to
치료인가,
commercialization
분석인가,
state, and many of them are already approved by MFDA. However, this AI system have all these different specialties.
모든 것들을 하나로
Some
뭉뚱그리는
systems
접근이
are for
타당한가에 대한 질문도 있었습니다.
diagnostics,
발전
and
단계에
some
대해서는
others are
분명히
for
의학 분야에
radiography
적용되는
interpretation. So
특정한
depending on its
형태의 발전
specialty,
단계
different
분류도
AI
우리가
system has
한번은
different
생각해 봐야 되지 않겠느냐라고
development
지적해 주신 분들이
status,
있었습니다.
and also
가전
the
단계 같은
questions
경우에는
they may
4단계가
pose can be
만들어져
very
있고
differential.
자율주행차 같은 경우에는 5단계로 만들어져 있는
And
이런
for
종류의
any AI
단계들도
system
한번은
or new
고려해 봐야
technologies,
되겠다라고 얘기를
there
해주셨고요.
are some established
그렇다면
different
의료
levels, such as for
인공지능은
autonomous
임상
driving,
현장에서는
there
어떤
are
방식으로
5
기능하는가?
different levels of development.
일부
And why
응답자들은
don't
협업
we
단계다,
establish or
협업자다,
define
콜라보레이터다라고
the AI
대답하신 분들도
development
있는가
in
하면
medical sector as
그것은
well into different
인간을
levels?
대체하거나
And
인간과
many
동등한 수준에 있는 정보 처리
Respondents
주체가 아니라
said
행위자가
that
아니라
these
그냥
AI
단순히
are the
기계적인 정보 처리
supporting
기법에
tools.
불과한 것이 소프트웨어에 불과한 것이다
It is
라고 응답하시는 분들도 있었습니다.
no more than software, so it simply
어쨌든 이
processes
모든
massive
응답자들은
volume of
사람
data
의사가 참고하는
to
정보의
assist humans
제공자로서
to make decisions. So most of the respondents believe that as a supporting tool, the AI system can be usable, but in the near term or in the long term, they do not see that this AI system can actually replace humans with the full automation. Nevertheless, it is still necessary to discuss the ethical guidelines in using AI systems. Because by using AI in the medical field, there can be some unexpected side effects. So we need to make only preparation for any ethical guidelines, because as we have seen in the genomic research, the lack of readiness in terms of ethical guideline in utilizing this genome can invite many unexpected backlashes, and that can determine the development of the research itself. Next, many people were concerned about the privacy, so my question was relevant to the privacy, and the answers were focused on data collection.
환원하는 방식으로
And
접근을 하고
the
있다.
concerns
그럼에도
include that
불구하고
privacy is
프라이버시가
basic
가지고
human
있는
right. So
익명화로 해결될
individuals
수
should
없는
have right
프라이버시
to
자체의
decide
특성,
or refuse
내
the
정보가
use of
어떻게 처리되고
information.
있는지, 그것이 익명화됐든
But all this
익명화되지
data
않았든
is
그
de-identified
정보에
or
대한 통제권을 갖고
anonymous.
싶어하는
Whether
기본적인
it is
권리에 대한 인식,
de-identified or not, still
그리고
individuals want to have control over
프로파일링이든
one's own data.
리아이덴티피케이션이든
So whether
이런
through
종류의
profiling
기술적인
or
가능성에 대한
identification,
우려,
still there are some
게다가
concerns over the
빅데이터가 되고
technical
다양한
issues.
기관이 다양한 정보를
With the
또
emergence of
대량으로
big
수집하는
data
과정에서
and the
발생하는
reckless collection of
그
massive
관리의
volume
어려움,
of data,
거기에
there can
수반되는
be
책임
issues
소재나
of data
인간 행위의
management
관리 문제와 같은 것
So
때문에 여러 가지
that may
고려
lead
사안들이
to
있겠다.
some
그럼에도 불구하고
wrongdoings
연구자들은 프라이버시를
in
적절하게
managing
관리해야
and
될
storing
필요성을
data.
느끼고 있다.
Nevertheless, these
제대로 된
researchers
에코시스템을
feel the
갖추는 것이
necessity of
연구자들에게, 또
managing this massive
개발자들에게는
volume of
상당히
data. Having the right
심각하고
ecosystem
또
is
산업
the
자체의
very
라이어빌리티를
urgent
결정하는
and
중요한
desperate
이슈라고
issue
이제
because
인식을
that
하고
can
있다라고
determine
보여졌습니다.
the
프라이버시에 대한
sustainability
설명을
of
통해서는
industry
지속적인
itself.
감시 및
For the
검토
question of
기준이
privacy,
필요하다라고 하는
many
점을
answered
들을 수
that
있었습니다.
continuous
아마
monitoring and
어떤
surveillance
것들을
is
들을 수 있었습니다.
required.
동의와
Next, consent and autonomy.
그 자율성의 문제에 있어서는 사실은
As for
동의 문제에 있어서
consent and
무엇이 더
autonomy,
주도할 것인가? 예를 들면
which will take the lead
사람이 가지고
as for
있는
the
이것은 이제
consent?
나중에 설명 책임과도
This
어느
was the
정도
main
연결이
question,
되는데
and this is some partially
의료진과
relevant to
인공지능 사이에
accountability
무엇이
issue.
우위에 서는가? 어느 행위자들이 더 주도권을
Is it
갖는가와
AI
같은 문제에
or
있어서
human
적절한
healthcare
설명이
professionals
반드시
when
동의
it
이전에
comes to
제공되어야
gain
하고 그런
consent
설명
from
절차를
patients?
반드시 갖춰야 한다. 예를 들면
The
동의를
information
단순히
should be
인공지능을
provided
사용합니다와 같은
in
동의가 아니라
advance.
어떤
To gain a
종류의
consented, you should
어떤
not simply tell
형태의
patients
그
that we are
프로그램을
going to use
사용하며
AI system
어느
for decision
정도로
making. Rather than
의료인이
that, you
참고할
need to give
것인가와
more
같은
detailed
그
information by
수준에 대한
saying
정보가
that
적절하게 제공이
to
돼야
which
할 것이다.
extent the AI
다만 이
system
부분에
will be used
있어서만큼은
and
분명히
AI
기술이
will
지속적으로
play what
발전함에
kind of
따라서
role in
달라질
final
것이고
decision
따라서
making and what
지속적인
will be the
감독, 지속적인
human
상호작용
role in such a decision
이게
making
매우
process.
중요한 기전이라고
That
제시가 되고
once
있습니다.
that also
물론
requires the
인공지능에서도 매우
continuous
중요한
monitoring of
측면 중에
AI
하나가
system as
공정성의
well.
문제입니다.
Fairness
사회적인
is a very
불평등이
important
재현될
topic in
가능성이 많이
AI
제시가 되고
discussion
있는데
because already
연구자들,
existing
개발자,
social
전문가들은
inequities can
개선되고
be
있고 개선할 수 있고
copied
해결될
once
것이다라고
again
하는
in this
입장과
AI
인공지능의 특성상
use
이
in healthcare
불평등의 문제는
sector.
생존할 것이다라고 하는
So
관점을
some of the
모두 다
interviewees
제시를 하고
mentioned
있었습니다.
that by
따라서 이런 종류의 문제에 있어서는
by the further
앞서 이제
development of AI
몇몇
system,
저희
this
이제
fairness
발표자들이
issue can be
얘기했듯이
addressed, while others
공정한
say that it
데이터
is
수집
actually
내지는
impossible to have a
적절하게
perfectly
인구 집단을
fair
대표하는 데이터를
AI
어떻게 만들
system.
것인가?
So
그래서
here the
어떻게
key
통제할
question
것인가?
is that
그렇게 해서
how can
만들어진
we
데이터의
get the
적절성을
population
평가할 수 있는 방법이
representative
무엇인가?
data
누가
set?
평가할
Who
것인가와
can
같은
control the
이슈들이
data and who
따르는
can
것으로
actually
답변해
evaluate the
주셨습니다.
fairness of such
이것과 이제 또
underlying
다른
data for AI
또
system?
인공지능에 있어서 유관된 저희가 이제 중요하게 여쭤봤던 질문 중에 하나가
Another relevant question
불투명성의
here
문제, 또
was
투명성의
about
요구에
the
대한 문제입니다.
transparency or opacity of the
특히
AI
이제
system.
임상 전문가들은
If
이렇게
you
답변을
are
합니다.
clinicians,
임상가들은
these
자신이 이해하지
clinicians
못하는
in
기술을
my
사용하기
survey
있어서 적극적이기
mentioned
어렵다.
that if you do not understand this
설명을
technology,
해야 하고
then
책임을
I
져야 하는
would not
입장에서
use.
이것이
It
어떤
is difficult
기술이고
for me
어떻게
to
활용되고
use the
어떻게
technology
개발됐는지를
in the
이해하지 못할
field.
때 과연
Because if you
적극적으로
do
활용할 수
not
있겠는가?
understand the technology,
산업적인
how
측면에
can I
있어서도
explain that
이
technology, the use of
불투명성의
that
문제는
technology to
반드시
my
해소가 돼야
patients?
되는 이슈로
So that
이해가
this
되고
opacity
따라서
of
이
the
부분에 대한
logic
적절한
box
검토 내지는
of
관리가
AI
필요한데
system should be
한
addressed
가지
fundamentally.
제안으로 또 한 가지
So as a
대안으로 제시되고
proposal
있는
or
것이
as an
사용
alternative
이후의
solution
분석. 그래서 그 적절성에 대한
from
평가와
my
같은 방식입니다.
interviewees was that
인공지능의
how
결과에
to
대한 분석
assess
요구하는
the
지침이
generated outcomes
이런
from
어떤
AI system.
인공지능이 활용이 된다면
Once any
인공지능을 또
outcome is
상업화로
generated from the
임상에
system,
적용했다면 그
and if
결과에
any
대한
AI
사후
system is
분석을 요구하는
commercialized
지침을
and used
규제자들이
actually in
개발하고
the
제시를 하는
field,
것도
there should
필요하지
be
않겠느냐.
the
몇몇
regulations
최근의 논의들이
to demand the post-analysis after use of the data or after use of the system.
연구자들이나 개발자들이 자발적으로 하기는
There are already existing recommendations similar to that, but these are only recommendations, so that cannot be requested by. It is hard for physicians and clinicians to ask for such post-analysis. So relevant laws and regulations should be in place. Next, patient-doctor relationship. Because this is artificial intelligence, we need to take into consideration the relations between patient and doctor. And in these relations, there are the issues of accountability. How developed the AI system is still the final accountability for any error or any mistakes happening in the decision making should lie on humans, not the AI system. If healthcare professionals who decide to use the AI system cannot explain why he decided to use the AI system and why the AI system generates such an outcome, then it will be very difficult to build trust in clinicians from our patients. Here, there comes the concept of human in the loop. Throughout the life cycle of AI system, at any stage, humans should be engaged in the process. AI is not 100% wrong, or it is not 100% correct as well. So at some certain stage, humans need to make an intervention to determine how the AI system can be utilized for what kind of purposes. So depending on the level of use of AI system, the accountability or the responsibility of clinicians can be differential. And also interviewees came up with the issues of the trustworthiness of data, the underlying data for the AI system. And here comes the data security issues. They are concerned that this data can be abused or misappropriated by wrong hands. And in Korea, the regulators will determine the level of technologies. So, as for the AI system, you need to have good relations with MFDA or the Ministry of Health and Welfare because they are the one who determines the insurance cost for the AI system. So you cannot ignore your relations with these authorities. So this is another interesting question. And my question was, what do you think is the trustworthy medical AI? And the answer includes that the accurate AI, explainable, replicable AI, or AI that passed clinical trials. These were the exemplary questions I asked. That the answer was that you need to pass all those criteria. But how much you need to make an intervention in this overall process should be the question you need to think. At the same time, all this AI system should be continuously monitored and evaluated. And what is the prospect for the AI system? Can it replace with people? The answer was no. But the attitude of people toward this AI system would be the issue. Even though we develop technology, if we simply do not utilize this technology, the technology cannot develop further. So if there is any issues, then these issues should be handled for further development of the AI system so that it can further contribute to the overall healthcare services. As for the ethics governance, it has something to do with the competence of healthcare professionals. At the same time, the technology should be continuously improved and corrected. And the AI implementers, who are the clinicians, should have the accountability for the use of the AI system. All of these will determine the ethical governance of the AI system. With this,
네,
let me conclude my
감사합니다.
presentation. Thank you.
모든
Thank you very
발표가
much for all the
끝났습니다.
speakers.
지금
Now that we have
시간이
finished listening
그렇게
to these
많게 남지는
speakers,
않았습니다. 한 3분
we have
정도
Q&A session
남았는데요.
about
혹시
3 minutes. We don't
플로어에서라도
have many
궁금한 사항이
hours or
있으면
many minutes,
질문을
but we will entertain
해주시면
questions
좋을 것
from the
같습니다.
floor.
저한테 온라인으로 질문
Also,
온
we
게 하나
have
있는데요.
one question raised
제가 처음
online.
발표했을
Let me
때
read
이제
it
밸리데이션
later.
얘기를
So we
했는데
talked
그게
about
무슨 의미인지 잘
validation in my own
모르겠다라고
presentation,
질문을
and the
했더라고요.
question is
제가
about
했던
asking what
연구는
validation was about.
그
In my own
미스
case,
연구라고 해가지고
that was
카디아
MIS
그 인저리에 대한
research.
연구였는데
It was about
그냥
cardiac
심장 수술이
injury.
아닌 인공지 그 심장 수술이
Not
아닌 그냥
using
복부 수술을
The
하더라도
cardiac
심장에
surgery,
작은
even though the
충격이
abdomen
가가지고
surgery
나중에
is there,
그걸로 이제
the
사망에
impact
이를
will be
수도
felt
있다라는 그런
onto
연구를 이제 그
the
신한대내과
heart, so
교수님하고
that
같이
it leads to
협업해가지고 같이
the demise
만들었는데
and death of the
그
patient.
카디악
So we had the
트로포닌
research together
수치를
in line
굉장히
with my
요즘에는
colleague
장비가
here.
좋아져가지고
Cardiac surgeries are
그 아주
quite advanced
소량도
nowadays with
디텍션을 할
the
수 있다고
technological
합니다. 근데 이
development.
소량으로
Very small
디텍션할 수
amount
있는데
of
이 장비를 가지고
the
있는
cancer
병원이
can be
그렇게
also
많지는
detected,
않다고요. 그래서
but not many
같은 종류의
hospitals have those
병원에서
devices.
같은 환자를
So
가지고 테스트를
for the
해보는 게
same
이제
type of the
익스터널
patients within
밸리데이션이죠.
the
네,
same hospitals,
실제로는
that's
익스터널
external
밸리데이션을 하려고
validation.
했는데
If we are using
익스터널
other
밸리데이션을
hospitals, that's
못했습니다.
also
왜
a
못했냐면
external validation.
하기
We aimed
싫다고
to
그
do
해당
that.
병원이 얘기를
However, the
해가지고
other
그러다
counterpart
보니까 한
hospital
병원에서
refused to
한
work with us in
데이터셋을
terms of the external
나눠가지고 이제
validation.
하나는
So we
인터널
had no choice
데이터셋,
but
하나는
to
이제
be
테스트
relying on
데이터셋을
somebody
두고
inside our
이제
hospital. So
나름대로
we had
뭐
two
밸리데이션을 했는데
divisions.
그러면은
One
익스터널
part
밸리데이션
had
하는
one
것보다는
validation.
당연히
The other
결과가
party
좋은
also
쪽으로
had
나올
another
수밖에
validation.
없거든요.
That in
그러다
itself
보니까
has a bias
왜냐면은
because
환경이
the direction
비슷하고
we have
시간은
is only the
그
positive one
의사의
because
술기가
we have
아무래도
the
그
same
같았을 거
environment
아니에요.
in the
그래서
hospital
약간
and the same
오버피팅 된다라고 해야
surgery
되나요?
of the
그런
patient.
식으로
So
결과가 좋을
we have
수밖에
some kind of
없다라는
overfitting
얘기를
in our
한
results.
거였습니다.
So
그래서
we
그거에
can
대한 답변은
see that
됐을
there's
것
only a
같고요.
positive results of that. That
혹시라도
was the
다른
part of the
질문이
validation I talked
있으시면
about. I hope he understood.
플로어에서라도 질문을
With
해주시면
that,
좋을 것
I'm
같습니다.
asking the audience to raise their hands as well if they have questions.
없으시면
I do not see any hand
지금
up,
시간이
and the time is
됐으니까
almost up.
저희가 20분간
Why
휴식
don't we
시간을
have
좀
a
갖고요.
break up until 5:20?
3시 40분에 다시 토론을
We'll have
이어가도록
the second
하겠습니다.
session from
3시 40분에
3:40. Now
토론을
it's
이어가도록
3:30,
하고요.
and we will have 10-minute break.
제가
So
공지사항 하나
at 3:40, I'd
말씀드리겠습니다.
like to start again.
저희가
I have an
음료랑
announcement to
다발을 좀
make. We have some
준비해놨는데요. 여기
beverages and
회의실
snacks
안에서는
at the back of the hall,
음식 섭취를
but
조금
it is
지양해
quite
주시고 바깥에
prohibitive
복도에서 좀 편안하게
have
드시면 되겠습니다. 화장실은 나가서
taken
오른쪽으로 가면
inside the
있습니다.
hall. So would you like to
그러면
go outside
3시
with these beverages and
40분에 다시
snacks
뵙는 걸로
and have
하겠습니다.
them
감사합니다.
enjoy them outside before coming in here? So see you again at 3:40.
네, 지금부터 종합 토론 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 종합 토론의 좌장은 성균대학교 의료인공지능 융합인재 사업단의 단장이시자 성균관대학교 의과대학 데이터 융합 미래의학 교실 주임 교수이신 정명진 교수님께서 진행해 주시겠습니다. 정명진 교수님은 대한의학영상정보학회 회장을 역임하시기도 했으며 현재 삼성서울병원 AI 센터장을 맡고 계십니다. 뜨거운 박수로 환영해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 자, 그러면 이제 정명진 교수님께 마이크를 넘기도록 하겠습니다.
네, 먼저 참석자 토론자 교수님들을 소개해드리는 순서부터 해야 될 것 같습니다. 제 옆에 앉아 계신 연세대학교 이일학 교수님 인사드리겠습니다. 연세대학교 의료법 윤리학과를 졸업하시고 현재 연세대학교 의과대학 의료법 윤리학과 교수로 재직 중이십니다. 그리고 옆에 G 헬스 코리아 오원석 부장님께서 내방해 주셨습니다. GS 코리아의 아시아 코리아 클리니컬 마케팅 리더를 맡고 계십니다. 그리고 삼성융합의과학원 정규환 교수님 오셨습니다. 정규환 교수님은 현재 성균관대학교 삼성융합의과학원 조교수로 재직 중이시고 대한의료인공지능학회 산업이사 그리고 대한의학영상정보학회 산업협력이사를 맡고 계십니다. 그다음 대한의료정보학회 이재호 이사장님
We also
방문해
have
주셨습니다.
Mr. Lee Se-ho from COSME,
이재호
Korean Society of
이사장님은
Medical
현재
Informatics. So he's leading
울산대학교
COSME.
의과대학 서울아산병원
And
응급의학
also
교실 그리고
Professor
정보의학
Lee
교실
Se-ho
교수로 재직
has been
중이시며
leading the information
대한의료정보학회
division of
이사장
Ulsan Medical
그리고
School.
대한
He's also a chairperson
환자안전학회
of
부회장
the
대한 한국의료질
Korean
향상학회 이사 등을
Patient
모두
Safety
맡고 계십니다.
Association and many
다음
other leading
SBS
organizations
보도국
in relation to the
조동찬
medical field.
기자님
We also have Mr.
참석해
Jo
주셨습니다.
Dong-chan, reporter of medical affairs.
조동찬 기자님은
from
의학 전문
SBS.
기자로서
He
한양대학교
has been
의과대학을
working
졸업하시고
as
현재
the medical
SBS
journalist.
보도국에
He has
재직
graduated
중이십니다.
from Hanyang University
그리고
Medical School. He is now
보건복지부
belonging with
의료
SBS.
보건의료 데이터
We also
진흥과
have
시문의
invited
과장님 내방해 주셨습니다.
Ms. Kim Eun-hye, Director of Health Data Promotion
그러면
Team of
오늘의
MOHW,
토론을
Ministry of
시작하도록
Health and
하겠습니다.
Welfare.
앞서
With that, I'd like to start
주제별
our
발표
general discussion.
4개를 잘
We will
들었습니다.
listen to all these people. And
인공지능
thank you very
우리가
much for giving us
기본적으로
presentations
대학교 때부터
before
지금까지
the
배운
break.
것이
So four speakers were there.
의료윤리라는
Up
것에
until
대하여
when
많은
we
공부를
graduated from
했습니다.
medical school,
그리고
we learned a lot about
도래한 이후에
medical ethics.
인공지능
Ever since
윤리라는
AI
문제가
came
또
into the field
불거졌는데
of medical areas,
작금에 이르러서는
medical AI with AI has
의료
been a
인공지능으로
new
발전하는
jargon.
의료 인공지능만의
Since the AI has become more advanced, we would have some kind of particular and specialized issues of ethics for AI. We will need guidelines or educational manuals for people who are involved in medical AI. So I always wanted to have these kind of programs in place, so I'm very pleased to have all these professionals working in the medical AI, including Professor Lee Il-hak and many others. I understand that they're very much interested in these fields. So first and foremost, I'd like to invite Professor Lee Il-hak to spend 5 minutes for this panel discussion, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. Our research team previously studied what kind of ethical principles should be established for the use of AI, and I already covered the topic in the presentation. So here in my discussion, I would like to more be focused on what will be the main focus, what will be the main priority in these ethical principles or in the use of AI. I am very good at timekeeping, so I will be brief as much as possible. Throughout the entire process of medical informatics, that all includes the data collection, data aggregation, and decision making, data analysis and decision making based on the analyzed data. By doing so, we would like to contribute to our patients or the health of the population. And with the emergence of AI technologies, probably we may expect a little bit better future, but that rosy outlook was not a common expectation among professionals in healthcare sectors. They believe that AI technologies would not replace the existing humans, 100%. Simply, these experts want to have a better treatment and better healthcare services for our patients. And by using AI technologies, what kind of ethical issues can we expect? And if there is any ethical issues, who should be held accountable?
윤리 지침 자체는 저희가
As for ethical principles, there are something we have contemplated and we want to establish. These are not any regulations on technologies. These are guiding principles to reaffirm the attitude and the mindset of those technology users so that they can make a right decision backed by these technologies. Technology itself does not have any good or bad. Technology itself is neutral. Simply, when we use these new technologies, there can be some unexpected side effects. So if there are those potential risks posed by these technologies, then we need to have some good principles so that we can go into a right direction by making right decision.
이런 과정에서
In
의료인
educating
협력하는 인공지능이 의료
and
체계에 들어오게 되면
in giving the healthcare services, if the AI is introduced in the process, there are some unavoidable
단지 해결돼야 그다음 단계에
vagueness
나갈 수 있다는 태도도 저희는
can happen
가능하지 않다고 생각합니다.
in the process. And only by eliminating this vagueness, we can move on to the next step. No, we don't think so.
사람들이 같이 모여서
Even with the existing and lingering the vagueness, still we can reach a consensus through our discussion and continuously we can further develop. For the patient safety
그리고 이런 의료 인공지능의 거버넌스라고 하는
and
것이
the AI
저희들은
in healthcare sector will require governance, and in this governance, we need to reaffirm the accountability of medical professionals in this process. Thank you.
먼저 발제
Thank you very much.
6분의 토론자께서 발제를 쭉 하신 후에
I'd like to ask all the 6 panelists to go around with their ideas before having our free and general discussion. Next turn is given to Mr. Oh Wan-sak, GE Healthcare Korea. Is going to give us his remark about these AI ethics guidelines. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
네, 저는 지금 GE 헬스케어라는
I am
회사에
from
지금
GE
종사를 하고 있는
Healthcare
한국인입니다.
Korea.
지금 오늘 오신 분들을 보시게 되면 대부분 다 교수님들,
So I am surrounded by many professors and also public officials today in this hall. But I am representing the private party as representative of GE. So I'd like to share my ideas regarding what kind of ethical issues there are and what kind of guidelines we can have from the private party. 521 devices are called as AI devices as of 2022. Many devices are there available for the marketing and being used. So out of the medical devices, we have the AI systems, which are mostly geared toward radiology. So 71% of the devices are the radiologists. We also have our applications, dermatology, cardiology, and dentistry, and others. So I told you that 75% of the devices are for the radiology. As mentioned by other speakers before the break, they said that we kind of expected the demise of the radiologists in the past, but it turned out otherwise. I agree with that because we do need a lot of radiologists in treating these radiology based on AI. About 13% of the radiology devices are provided by GE, to be followed by other competitors like 7% and 1%. So they are providing devices based on AI into the market along with GE. GE has been selling a lot of imaging-related AI devices. If you look at the list of the potential and possible applications in the market, many of them have the name AI included. But I do doubt sometimes if they are really AI-based ones because they kind of seemingly a marketing hype when they want to use the word AI in their brand names. Whenever we hear the word AI, especially when it comes to imaging, we have to know how the images are acquired, how the testing has been made, and how these healthcare professionals are using them. So for us, when we get the data or images, of course, we have to have the prior informed consent from the patients. That's a rule to make in our company. But sometimes if we are trying to create something else, we are creating some other international project themes, that will be kind of cumbersome to have all the approvals from these patients. It takes time. Of course, we have to identify what kind of potential problems there are. We all know that there is a need for us to confirm that there's no issues with this data, but it is quite difficult. Sometimes we use pseudonyms, or we do not disclose any of the privacy information, or we are getting the approvals from the patients. But sometimes, only sometimes, I wonder if there is a need for us to get 100% of the approvals, and especially each time when we had the next round of the development, do we have to repeat getting the approvals from these patients again and again? That's my concern. Sometimes when we have the radiologist devices, sometimes we have to decide whether these images are used as they are, or sometimes they are just linked to other devices, or if they are used partially. So we have to know exactly what kind of privacy issues there are, or ethical issues there are, when it comes to the partial use of the data of the patients. That's my idea, and I'm representing the private parties. Thank you.
Next, Professor Jeong-Kyu-han, would you please proceed with your discussion on the bias of AI?
네. 일단 인공지능 의료 AI 윤리 전반에 대해서는
For ethics of AI in healthcare in general, I agree on the previous discussions. Professor Lee mentioned that the ethical principles for the use of AI in healthcare cannot be free from vagueness perfectly. So we keep having this vagueness, and any regulations have some relevance to ethical guidelines, and any regulations will have impacts on the technological ecosystem. So medical AI or the AI in healthcare, what exactly does it mean? Not only in medical domain, but also in many other care pathway or workflow. So many different AIs are being used with different roles and functionalities. So some of them pose significant threats, but others are not having any negative impact or threat to us. So, or on one hand, one AI system may be strictly monitored in its development to avoid such risks, but when it comes to its use, it can be abused excessively. Then it may pose a significant threat as well. So when interpreting the outcomes from the AI system, when we discuss the interpretability, is the outcomes something measurable? Without these discussions, if we continue to make requests, whether even though it is ethically reasonable, still is it practical? Someone should be engaged in R&D. So there are users and there are developers and there are researchers for this AI system. And to meet the expectations from these different stakeholders, we need to have some blueprint, which are the grand ethical principle. And when we discuss the AI in healthcare, always we talk about bias. So to avoid any bias in the AI outcomes, diverse data should be provided to train the AI system. If that is the case, then probably in a very heterogeneous culture, the AI system can be developed much easily without any bias, because they can be fed with multiple and diverse data. So if it is in the United States, the AI system developed in the United States based on the mix of different data can be less biased compared to the AI system, which is developed in Korea because we are more homogeneous people. So our data can be more biased compared to those data produced or generated in the US. The bias can occur everywhere in interpreting, in training the AI system, or in producing the outcomes as well. And also when using or when interpreting the outcomes from AI system, depending on the personal bias of those AI implementers or AI consumers, another bias can happen as well. So my aspiration is that from the development to the clinical trial to validation to maintenance, the AI system should go through all these different stages of life cycle, which engages so many different stakeholders. And if we have a grand ethical principle that can be applicable to all these different type of stakeholders, then overall that will further develop the AI system and create a favorable ecosystem for this.
Well, thank you very much. From the perspective of the ethics, we do have different and diverging approaches coming from the academicians and also coming from the engineers. So the engineers are trying to see the things in number, while the medical professionals are looking at it differently. Now the question goes to Professor Lee Jae-ho. Would you like to share your ideas regarding what kind of ethical guidelines there are to be needed? We talk about AI often, and today we've been talking about AI many times, just like Mr. Chung said. But this AI is really low level, and we do have low functioning AIs as well. We also heard about Watson by IBM this afternoon. If you compare it with the Google's programs and also the deep learning programs shown by the AlphaGo, they're quite different. So Watson is nothing compared against deep learning. So whether we are dealing with a very low-level AI or very high advanced ones, the result is quite different. So when we have these digital programs coming from Google, these kind of digital programs should be also differentiated from the AI products. So we have to know all these kind of differences amongst all these elements. And Mr. Oh showed us a lot of elements, and mentioning these things, we also have to understand that maybe the other digital healthcare services and programs in replacement of AI, if we have these guidelines of AI and ethics in this, maybe that's not sufficient, because we have to be preparing ourselves for the ethics of AI as well. So do we have all these guidelines available for AI outside of the existing devices for medical purposes? We have to ask ourselves if we have the full preparedness against AI healthcare ethics. If we have the same scope of the areas where we have to have these applications for the medical stuff, we need all of these as well. So we have to differentiate two situations. One is whether we need all areas of these medical areas, or whether we need to have the coverage of the AI-related medical only. We also heard other questions like the availability of the data. It is about the possibility of data. When we have the data, probably the male adult data is quite abundant, easy to find. However, if we have children's data with very rare diseases, they're very difficult to get because the data in itself is quite short. If we have the need for the data of African people, with some diseases, we do not have many data sets, so it is very difficult to get them as well. So in these kind of cases, it is inevitable to see the bias of the data. So we have to be able to see the data differently. Can we say that these limited data sets are representative of all the people in the world? So we have to ask these kind of questions to us. AI can or cannot solve the problem of equity in the future. That was the main point by Professor Lee-Hil Hwa. That also requires different approaches or diverging approaches. So if we have the better access to digital data, then you can have the better services of the medical areas, and they can have better, higher quality services. If people who are underprivileged want to have the access to medical stuff, that will be the limitation as well. If you look at the social media, we have a lot of patients who have the disabilities or dementia. They can be covered by the national health systems, but can they be covered by other technologies? I don't think so. So if we have the AI functionalities in the surgical robots, that's also included. So what kind of approaches will be made by all the general public in terms of AI should be differentiated. So it's difficult to have a generalized concept about what the future of AI, of medical first. So all these areas will cover the medical stuff as well. So what is the AI specific ones of the medical field? And we should identify them. And then we have to ask ourselves, do we really need ethics for the AI? Otherwise, we can start with all these kind of AI availability first, and to ask ourselves whether we have to complement some of the shortages or not. That's my opinion.
Before big data and artificial intelligence in evidence-based medicine, there were clinical trials, and all these clinical trials were not conducted to every different nationality or every different ethnicities. So those medicine which went through the clinical trials and approved only in the United States should be used for patients in Africa. So in some senses, those biases have been existing all the time in our medical history. So it will be difficult to avoid such bias forever. Next, let me give the floor to Mr. Cho. So what is your perspective as a journalist for this AI use in healthcare? Good afternoon. My name is Cho Dong-chan from SBS. First, let me share my personal opinions and how the society or the press sees the AI-enabled devices. I was majored in the neurology during my school days, so I personally touched the human brain. But as a modern technology, we do not have any ways to separate the analog and digital. In Matrix, it shows very accurately how our brain perceives the world. In our brain, we cannot separate the emotion and ideology. If you give the signal to the brain, then you can touch something because the brain perceives the signal. Of course, there is some time lag. So still, with some modern technologies, we can make our arm move. So by using the technologies, we can make someone's heart beat faster if he sees another woman. So it is possible with the modern technologies. So artificial intelligence is literally a kind of artificial brain, but it is not. It is far from the perfection. That's the reason why we have so many discussions and heated debates on ethical guidelines. But if we succeed in making artificial intelligence perfectly imitating the human brain, then what use all these discussions would have in that future? When I studied in the US, I met a friend. In 2018, the friend published his paper 3 times on 3 journals. On Nature, first, he published his article as a covered article. He is an engineer, so his main topic was how to use the artificial intelligence. And I was actually freaked out. How to look at the cancerous cell through an electronic signal. Why did I see that possibility? Why he saw that possibility? All cells have electronic signals, but most of the clinicians did not fail to actually see the chance by looking into this electronic signal from cancerous cells. And recently I visited Singapore and I listened to the lecture from AI expert. And he gave a very simplified explanation on AI. What is deep learning and what's the basic elements we need to know about the artificial intelligence. That was a very interesting experience. And on my way back home hotel, I thought that in my world, I really wish that artificial intelligence would not be perfected. Artificial intelligence had some issues in terms of hardware, even though it is close to perfection in terms of software. So there are some expressed concerns over AI's possible control over human beings. And in a famous TV soap opera, it was mentioned that AI answered to the question that we would respect humans, only we will put you in human zoo. So no one can guarantee such a world would never come in near future. And if such a future realizes, then can you say that our discussion currently on ethical principle would be useful anyhow? Now I will put my journalist hat again. Many people question about the ethical medical services. Most people do not care about the ethics in healthcare services. When people read news articles, they do not care about any ethical issues of those articles. So the only key for any ordinary person is whether it is beneficial for him or not. So when it comes to ethical guidelines or not, that is limited to only medical field. But from a patient's perspective, the only question they are interested in is that by using the AI, is it helpful to me or is it offering me some benefits or not? So from a supplier perspective, you may have this kind of ethical discussions, but from the general public's perspective, your discussion should be more focused on whether you can guarantee the actual practical benefits of the current AI system. So you talked about the transparency. So if you can share the pros and cons of existing AI system in a transparent manner, that will be the most ethical approach you can take for the general public. But simple technology competed against with multidisciplinary hospital. But if you compete this system against a very small clinic where there are only one or two physicians, what kind of results could we expect from that AI system? If you have some problems with artery in your brain, if you have some aneurysm, the diagnosis or the accuracy of diagnosis can be very different depending on what kind of major you may have in the medical sector. So even though you are a healthcare professional, if you are radiographic interpretation, radiology field, or if you are from the brain surgery, brain surgeon, then you may have very different diagnosis on the same radiographic image. So here what I want to say is that if you want to detect the aneurysm with the AI technologies, if there is those AI-enabled devices for radiographic interpretation, if you are going to the Seoul National University Hospital, there are so many experts, so such AI-enabled device would be of no use. So you don't need to use the device anymore. But if you put that machine on a very small local clinic in rural area where you don't have any neurosurgeon, then if you can put that machine for the benefit of patients, then the usage or the benefits of such AI system can be assessed very differently compared to the case when it is used for big general hospital in urban cities. So rather than device or technology itself, when and where you are going to deploy such AI system can give you different answers to your question of this ethical discussion. Before having this AI discussion, I think Professor Yang is already Mr. Yang must be very familiar with these issues. There were already lingering issues in the medical sector. There have been new technologies, so even without defining the ethical guidelines for such new technologies, still those new technologies will give the profits. So the industry, hospitals, and the medical field start to make some actions to utilize these new technologies. And as a journalist, I see such a situation is just too far away because there are already lingering issues we have failed to address already while industry and experts are making actions to utilize these technologies for the profit. We simply started to discuss another big topic, which is AI. As a journalist perspective, we are more interested in the use of AI. Is it useful? Is it helpful? That will be more interesting to a journalist. If using AI will be more helpful to treat my diseases compared to traditional treatment, then that can be more interesting question, not only to the journalism, but also to the general public. Personally, I wish that I do not want to see any perfect AI, but nevertheless, even though there is a good AI system, you cannot expect journalism to play a very pivotal role in leading any ethical arguments, ethical debates on this.
Well, thank you very much. What you have said and it made us think very difficult subjects. Whether this is better than the current status or not, and we don't have any binary answer to that. And I'm not saying that we should have the binary system. We have a holder detector to put on the body for 24 hours. Well, for example, I think we are entering the situation where we have to have an analogy to what is justice. For example, if we had a trolley dilemma, if we have to choose between killing one person over 5, is it okay to kill one person because we can avoid killing 5 people? So what you're saying here is that we have to decide between the two binary things, whether it is better to serve one person or multiple people with the different devices. So last but not least, I'd like to ask Ms. Kim to give us a remark. Thank you very much. It's a very difficult job to come after Mr. Zhou, as he was speaking so energetically. I do have a project with Professor Yi Il-hak and my organization. We've been thinking about the ethics, and also we have been asking what kind of guidelines can there be regarding the AI ethics. The reason for us to be interested in this area is because when we have the innovation policies and plans in 2021, since then on, when we think of AI is out of data. No one can deny the fact that data is important for AI. And also, as Professor Chung said, we should have some kind of the system to have the data applications. We should have the data and R&D applications. We also have to have a connector of all these elements. The final and most important part of the elements is the ethics. Although our ministry has the guidelines, we do not have to think that we have to enforce it mandatorily. As Mr. Zhou says, we have some limitations. We have to understand that. But no one knows the final end shape of our technologies. So we are just in an infant stage, but we have to start with these technologies along with the ethical considerations. So the ethical considerations should start from the day one. So we've been thinking about ethics, but we have also talked about all other things, not just the ethics, as we know that. So if we want to take all of the elements, of course we have to think of the legal matters, and also we have to separate them from the ethical issues. Legal is one thing and ethical is another. So we do not want to combine them together because they cannot be simply working together. Absolutely. What is the biggest interest in us and also interest for us is what kind of globalization process can there be made. And although we have a lot to cover, what is a particular concern we have to consider in the medical areas? How can we get this clue to be connected with other parts of it? Although we agree that there is a need for us to have the ethical issues, the next thing is to ask all these policy decision makers to understand that. So the current level of understanding is not enough for anybody to make a policy out of it. We don't want to differentiate other people. We don't want to segregate other people because of these kind of data. Of course, all the diseases are concerns, but we have particular important diseases in practice. So we don't want to disregard other minor illnesses. But it is only inevitable for us to have our focus on the most important diseases first, in order for AI not to disregard some of the other less important diseases. We should enact a law not to have these kind of this regard. And also we need to have the better advancement of AI decision making. Developers of the computer systems are also experts, and also we have our experts in the legal and ethical fields as well. So amongst all these experts and professionals, they have to combine their efforts together. So that is the reason for us to have this fundamental act of the life protection. That's what the government is interested in. So AI is one thing, and the legal and ethical matters are another. But we have to have a streamlined position of the AIs and the legal matters on these medical issues, because we do not see the smooth combination now yet. National Assembly of Korea is trying to have the review on this, so this kind of new enactment is pending there. So the government is trying to push to one direction there, and also the metaverse from this year, the R&D on the metaverse will be starting. So for that area, ethical issues will be also combined. We have the power of ethics, and these kinds of ethics can be represented by the trust of the patients onto the medical systems and the government. Once they have the trust from the general public, all the power will be further augmented. Based on the researches and scientific background, we should have more applications in the medical field. And these kind of applications with all these research should be more convincing to the general public. So I look forward to having more rounds of discussions like this in the future with more details and more practices. Thank you.
토론자들의 발제는 마쳤습니다.
With this, we concluded the panelist discussion. So far, regarding the presentations or panel discussions, if you have some comments or questions you want to share, please feel free to raise the hands and use the microphone. Professor Kim, please use the microphone for the interpretation and broadcasting.
앉아서 말씀드리겠습니다.
Or maybe I can ask question while I take seat. I am working in the AI Convergence Talent Cultivation Project in SKKU University, and I am working for the education of our students. So I think the diverse perspectives on AI ethical discussion is really important. And you mentioned about the vagueness of this ethics in AI. And in some senses, I think we have something to think about the philosophy when it comes to this ethical discussion. So that's why the ethical principle is really important. So when I discuss with my students, I am more focused on the futuristic or forward-looking perspectives and philosophies rather than talking about the regulations and existing laws. And when we discuss these ethical guidelines, I used to talk about the super AI, the low AI, and the strong AI, where Mr. Zhou mentioned that you don't want to see the perfect AI, and I share your concern as well. But when my students grow into next generation driving force, they are going to be the leader. So their perspective or what kind of attitude they are going to have will be really important. We are really afraid of moving on to the ultra artificial intelligence area or hyper AI, and the area this AI can cover will be expanded further. So to what extent can we allow the AI intervention, and to what extent the human should be held accountable for any issues generated by AI. The presentations and your comments really helped me a lot, so it gives me the food for thoughts when I teach my students in my classes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that input. To the panel discussants, can we have further ideas from you? Does any of you want to add more comments? Panelists, please. Yes, thank you. I was asked several questions, so I'd like to respond to them. Mr. Cho, as a journalist, gave us a very big picture. And also his question is quite large enough. So what does ethics do? And that's the first question. And regarding the efficacy and efficiency, we are quite interested in them. And when we start to talk about ethics, I believe these remarks are actually the fundamental reasons for us why we have to be interested in ethics. Who is going to do that and who is going to be benefited? And how can we divide these kind of benefits? So that's where the ethics start, where the benefits are there. We have to start our ethics. The allocations and divisions of these benefits and gains should be equally made or justified at least. So depending on the phases of the development of the technologies and also according to the shape of the technologies it brings, we have to be able to respond to them differently each time. These kind of capabilities should be further enhanced by us, and it will be a continuous loop to upgrade our capabilities. So this kind of continuum of these development of technologies is something that we need to have. We should have the cycle of the reviews, monitoring, and development. So how can we get the support from the government in terms of the policies to do that? That's another thing we want to have. One more thing, decision made on ethics should be reflecting the fact that there are limitations in the technologies and the people as well, because we have to be relied on technologies. We cannot solve all the problems with technologies only unless we are continuing to develop the technologies. And then over time, we can also be benefited by the technologies. So technology is not something that we have to control or monitor. Technologies are there to help us to develop ourselves also. And also, as Mr. Cho said, what kind of level of agreement can we make or the approvals can we make? He's asking how many approvals should we get? And we do not have the right answer right now because we do not have any silver bullet for all the questions. Rather than having some kind of the single answer to all the questions, what we have to focus on instead is how to communicate with the rest of the people so that they can be more trusting the reason for giving us approvals. We have to give new information back to them in return for having their approvals on the use of their data and privacy matters. So we have to be able to continue with this kind of cycle to convince the users. Thank you.
어떻게 보면은 뭐 법이라든가
Ethics
공식
are
이론보다는
not any formula or law. It is more like some religions.
윤리라는 것의 기준도
It is something common with religions, where ethics may have different standards this year and for next year.
해결할 수 없는
So criteria for ethics evolve.
방향을 잡아주시고
And if there are issues you cannot address with laws and regulations, then ethics can be the answer. So any ethical principle can be a guiding light for the general public in these vague issues. Any other questions or comments?
데이터와 관련된 말씀들이 좀 있어서
I have something to share about data. This is not limited only to artificial intelligence. This is more generally applicable to data in general. So I want to mention about something that can help you understand the data security. The data is collected everywhere these days. Even in Singapore, the Singaporean government installed an app to collect data recklessly from the general public, which angered the people.
서비스를 하기 위해서 모으는 데이터들이 상당히 많습니다.
For the AI system or for the system in general, those data are collected only for the use of the system, and the OECD guidelines and other international guidelines recommend that the minimal data should be collected. But in medical and healthcare sector, we need to collect data to provide services. So very detailed and specific data can be collected from one patient. More customized care can be provided to that patient. And the internal data within the hospital would not be sufficient enough. So from the outside life of those patients, we can collect more data so that we can offer more proper treatment to that person. And if we cannot collect data from the vulnerable, then they can be in turn more vulnerable or can have less access to these services. There is an app only for the breast cancer patient, but we cannot collect the sufficient data from breast cancer patients. So as a result, we collected more data from other cancer patients as well, not only including the breast cancer patients. If that is the case, can we rely on the data and the outcomes which are generated from the data, which include all the other data from other types of cancer patients? So this is the difference between the healthcare sector and other fields as well for the data collection. If we need to have those mass volume of data and the specific data for better healthcare services, to what extent can we need to ask for consent from patients?
I have one more to add here. Having heard that, when we talk about the vulnerable people, let's start with the AlphaGo. Mr. Sedo Lee had only one event he won, but all other matches he lost. If we did not have the deep learned match of AlphaGo, was it able to beat Mr. Lee Sedol? We had a very one-time event of the matches of Go at that time. But let's talk about the vulnerable people of Korea. If we have the data of all the people who are underprivileged, if we use their data to have the treatment of these people only, and then we do not use the purposes for any other purposes, that's okay, maybe, because we do not have any other applications. However, if we use their data to create something really profitable as products, if their data becomes the sources of something new and better as technologies or new products, that's another thing. If I were them, I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't like my data to be used as a source for more advanced technologies, more advanced products. Maybe I'm only a single person in the country, so maybe my ideas can be denied. But what about the whole population of the people? If the people are really wanting to have the products that are serving the general public, of course, that they should give assent to that. And if I were given a chance that, if I were given a chance that we're going to have biggest values added, then what is it that you want to do or not? So it's kind of sending your information to others, and you're just feeding other people to make more money. So you have to ask them. You have to ask around their opinions if they really want it or do it. Yes, thank you. And I would like to add one more thing here. When we make public data, we need a lot of fees, a lot of raw data. When we have the public projects, the citizens are sometimes asked to give have the responsibility on this kind of projects? Are they asked to provide their own information and data for the sake of great cause of the country? So we had that kind of issues. So is it a part of participation by the people? So we even talked about this kind of concept in the form of nation building. So we have the data coming from the individuals. This kind of risky, and also people have their own rights. People have their right not to be opened, and they have their own privacy. We understand that. Nevertheless, if this is for the good cause of the country, they might be willing to participate. But if on the other side, if they receive the data, they have another kind of responsibility and accountability. They have to pledge that they're going to use those data taken from the people in the right manner and also for the good cause only. Otherwise, there will be a great risk in there. So they have to make sure that no other purposes will be served. So we have to build a consensus among the people only if there is a guarantee that they are going to be used for the common goods. So how we can do this, that's another thing as well. So we have to try and find other ways of getting that kind of consensus down the
종교라고
road.
말씀드렸지만 그런 신뢰를 회복하는
I said these ethics have something common with the religion. So building this trust or restoring the trust in these debates will be the role that our discussion for AI in health sectors can play. We are running out of time, so I think it is time for us to wrap up our discussion. Concluding this session, I'd like to thank our panelists and the people in the floor for your time and attention. I wish that today's colloquium must be a very fruitful discussion for every one of us. So with this, let me declare the 2022 Medical AI Colloquium is officially over. Once again, let me thank you all for your attendance and participation. If there's anyone who needs a parking ticket, you can tell our front desk staff the car license numbers. With this, your parking fee can be supported. Thank you very much.